Do not adjust your devices, ladies and gentlemen. This is exactly as it says on the tin. Today, the historic Road Racing Championship is coming to you from the virtual Targa Florio, and I have been reliably informed that we are using the shorter track layout, so we're only doing 44 miles per lap around the public roads of Sicily. And just like the Isle of Man event a couple of months ago, this will be a time trial format. The drivers heading off one by one from the pit lane in their 1950 sports cars, and hoping to get around this island in a safe and timely fashion. Used between 1932 and 1970, this track has seen the great cars of the era, with a lap record of 33 minutes 36 set by a Porsche 908 car in 1970. So we've got hairpins, we've got sweepers, we've even got a straight longer than the Mulsanne straight pre-chicane, and elevation changes of nearly 2,000 feet from lowest to highest. In the words of D-Generation X, are you ready? Well, if you are, we've got our fantastic broadcast partners in Simply Race bringing you the pictures this afternoon for the GP Labs Historic Road Racing Championship. And in the commentary booth with me, Ada Millward, is a name as epic as the Targa Florio, a man who was once described, and that is Paul Jeffrey. Paul, how you doing?
Hello, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful welcome. And hello to everybody on the Tinterwebs watching today. I've got to admit, I am rather excited about this one, Aidan. Epic cars, epic tracks, and a couple of hours worth of racing. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, having seen some of the warm-ups that some of the drivers are doing, I think everything can go wrong because there's not a lot of room for error. We saw at Isle of Man people potentially going off the side of a cliff. It's going to be even worse here, but they are going a little bit slower. The track length is sort of around the same as the Isle of Man, but the average speed is a lot lower. They're probably not going to get more than about 80 miles an hour for most of it. Obviously, that long straight, they're going to be doing nearly 200, but the rest of it, yeah, more than 80 miles an hour is going to be a bit of a stretch. But I've got some fun facts that we can just give out whenever anything's happening. But I was looking it up. This event is actually older than the Indy 500, the Mille Miglia, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is insane, even though it's not been run since the 1970s.
And even more insane, we're doing that in virtual form now, which just shows how the world has progressed, I suppose. It's incredible that we live in an environment where we can do these kind of events. And as a first-timer into this championship, I just want to say a big shout-out to GP Labs for devising this championship and putting it on for us all to enjoy at home and for the drivers to enjoy out on track as well. This is very much, sir, my kind of event. And I did try to practice for this one, because I fancied participating, and then quickly realised my lesser weakness, shall we say, is in the commentary box rather than behind the wheel, because there's a big challenge ahead for these guys and girls racing today.
Well, there's still Le Mans for the next one. You could do that in the. If it's mostly straights, you'd be fine. It's basically
even
an 8 mile oval.
Yeah, even straights I'm rubbish at. These cars, we were saying it off air, weren't we? That yes, you said the average speed is not really going to get above 80 mile an hour, but it's the stopping where the problem comes in with these. They are such long braking distances. You feel like you've got the car down to a really slow speed for the corner, and then turning, no grip, straight into the scenery. It is such a challenge.
Yeah, with the Jag does have disc brakes, thankfully, but the rest are all running drums. But here is the overall drivers' championship standings. So we've got an overall, and then they're separated by class. We've got Jake, GP Laps, Richie Axelson, the many names of one man there on 26 points, with Jerne Simičić on 14 in behind. But Jerne has used up his 2 drop rounds now, so he's going to be still fighting for the win. Jake there leading the 5-litre class because he's first overall, therefore he's going to be leading that class as well, with Jerne Simičić in behind. Jackson Robillard, who had quite a strange accident at Dundrod last time out. He's there on 12 points with Scooby and Enzo Fazzi in 4th and 5th, and then basically everybody else that's pretty much finished a race so far. 3-litre class, Rajasu is currently leading that one with Eduardo Beninca in 2nd place. Martin Bayer in 3rd. He's also used up his drop round allocation, so he could potentially get back into the standings. This is all pre-drops and things like that, so this isn't like the final, what do you want to call it, the final thing. Anyway, there's some good names in there. Ariel Diaz, he's done pretty well. Sinmad Paul as well had a good run at Dundrod. Ascari Cantonen, now this is the one we're looking at the most for this round. Absolutely obliterated everybody at Dundrod. He was 4th overall in pre-qualifying for this event, but don't count him out because he'll be starting fourth and he'll be driving. We saw him scantily flicking his way through the Dundrod hairpin last time out, and that was very fun to watch. And to win a race in the, on paper, slower class, but nimble car for this type of track, is going to get absolutely hammered on that long straight, but through the rest of it, Ascari Canton is definitely the one to watch. He could win overall. Vladimir Kotliarski there in 6th place as well, racing quite well with 7 points. And there's the Hot Lap Championship standings. Ascari Cantonen, 5 points overall. Martin Bayer in 2nd place with Jake in 3rd. So I actually don't know how this one works, if this is just for like the pole positions and things like that. But Ascari Cantonen beating out 5-litre class cars. So anything can happen, and anything can happen over the next 2 hours, Paul.
Yeah, and I think that's what's one of the really fascinating aspects of a race like this. You say we've got different classes, we've got the 5 litres, the 2 litres, the 3 litres, but they've all got their own strengths and weaknesses, these cars. So clearly the 5 litre is going to be a rocket ship in a straight line. But going back to what I said earlier, Aidan, they're so hard to get slowed down for these corners, to get them pitched in. You're squabbling for grip at any given time. So often a lighter, a more nimble car, yeah, not quite got the same horsepower, but it's a lot easier to get through the twisties. And at this track, twisties are something that you need to be very, very strong on indeed. So 3 laps, roughly 2 hours worth of racing. It's not necessarily going to be the driver that is the quickest that comes out on top. It's those who make the least mistakes. And we know very well indeed, a little mistake at the Targa Florio usually wraps you around a tree, and then it's goodbye to your event. So stay out of trouble is the name of the game, isn't it? And really, I think anybody could take this one out of sort of the top 20 drivers in this championship.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because you look at the calendar, and you had round 1 at Longford, you had round 2 at Spa, the old triangular shaped Spa rather than the submachine gun shaped Spa that we have today, and then we've got Le Mans right at the end. That's the 5 litre territory, right? That's horsepower, that's long straights, that they're going to clean up at those ones. But Isle of Man, Dundrod, and this one are where the 2 litres come back into play. So the season has actually been quite perfectly balanced in terms of where the cars are strong and weak.
Yeah, exactly. And the drivers, of course, as well. Another thing that's worth bearing in mind, the drivers are becoming more acclimatized, is maybe the right way of putting it, to these cars, this kind of championship, this kind of setup, and the pressure. And again, anybody who's done any kind of racing, either esports or heavy duty league racing, or just going out there into a server for fun, practice is one thing. Being in the heat of competition is an entirely different one altogether. And yes, the guys will have done a lot of running on this circuit to try and get a small amount of understanding of the whys and wherefores of how the track works. But when you go into a race and you've got 3 laps basically to set your time, and whoever gets the overall next shortest time from when they set off to when they cross the line for the final time will be deemed the winner. And you know that you can't afford to make a mistake. The pressure really ramps up, and then that's where we see different names coming to the front, don't we, compared to what we maybe have seen in the pre-race preparations. And it's who accommodates that pressure the best. It's who makes the least mistakes, and more importantly, Aidan, it's also who is willing to hang out and take the risks more than their rivals. And that's going to be absolutely fascinating to see who's willing to take those shortcuts, who's willing to dip a wheel on the grass, who's willing to get the car a little bit more sideways to rotate it and get on the throttle quicker. That'll be the person that can do that dance between risk and reward the best, will be those that come out towards the sharp end, hopefully, in theory, as we come to the checker.
Yes, but I can imagine learning a place like this. It's kind of like learning the Nürburgring. Everybody knows Sector 1 of the Nürburgring up to about Flugplatz and Schwedenkreuz and that little region. The rest of it, I mean, like Sector 3 of the Nürburgring, I can't do it. Sectors 1 and 2, I'm all right. Sector 1, yeah, pretty good. But you're going to keep on going. So I think the drivers are probably going to be able to push a little bit more for the first couple of miles maybe, and then the rest of it's going to be a little bit, it's going to peter off as it goes in terms of how much they send it. But even then, sending it through Sector 1, a bit too much on the grass, tires not quite there, full fuel on the car, they're going to be off into a wall, especially going through some of these towns and villages along the route, where if they hit the curb, they're going to go upside down into a shop or a house or something like that. We see, I mean, like Jackie Stewart famously in 1966 at Spa, where he ended up in a woodcutter's hut because he dropped it on a wet patch at the Master King. So we watch it with 2022 eyes, looking at the virtual world, but imagine taking like the TARDIS back to 1954 and watching them do this for real. It must have been absolutely insane.
Oh man, there's nothing I would have loved more to have been able to do that one. When I'm rich and famous in years to come, I will invent myself a time machine and go back and do something like this, because this is proper thoroughbred motor racing. There's no electronic trickery. There's no things like drag reduction systems or amounts of time that you're allowed to have CFD and wind tunnel. None of that garbage. It is just pure mechanics, pure bravery. The driver is the differentiator. And as you say, it's such a varied circuit. So the first sector, which is not even the first sector, I crashed before I get out of the first sector, but the first portion of this track is quite open road, it's quite sweeping, it's quite quick, as you can see on screen now. You've got a lot of greenery around you. You make a mistake, it's very quick and easy to get onto that grass, lose all the traction, and then go sliding off into the scenery. You could collect a tree, you could fall into some water, you could hit one of the little stone walls that we've got dotted around. That's one element of risk and danger, or launch off a banking. But then, as you say, you get into the town and villages, and that becomes, in effect, Monaco times 1,000. So you make a small mistake there, run a little bit wide, you'll tag a brick wall. Tag a brick wall, you'll derange your suspension, or you'll heavily damage your car. Then it becomes more difficult to drive, and you've still got 20 miles of driving to do after that. So you're carrying a damaged car on a damn difficult circuit where you can't make any mistakes, and then you're off again. So it really, really is. It's one of those events where it's just inviting you to do something wrong at every single turn. And with these kind of cars, 1950s technology, it's a very sprightly, it's a very mobile cars that these drivers are racing, so you can't even chill out on the straights.
And we are actually officially now racing as we're on board with Isidoro Hrrc. This is right at the beginning of the lap. You got the pits there on the left. Expect him to come into the pits at the end of, well, this lap, because, you know, the fuel's not going to last 80 minutes, is it? We're just debating how long the tank will actually last. I think it probably lasts about an hour, so they'll probably put in the actual amount needed per lap. So it's a bit mad, but we can see that, as you said, Paul, this bit's quite open. There are bollards, there are trees, there are things like that. Darren Andrews has since been released from his pit box, so they are driving in 15-second intervals, just like they do at the Isle of Man, just like they did at the real the Targa Florio back in the day. Jone Simoncic, R-Factor eSport extraordinaire in his Ferrari. Should be fun to watch him and see the times that he can put in. It's annoying. He's good in everything he touches, is Jone Simoncic. Darren Andrews there at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You can see these concrete walls on the insides of the corners as well as the outside, so hit one of those. And as you said, Paul, the suspension will be rearranged and you have to drive with the car pointing sort of like it's going into a crosswind at the local airport.
Yeah, which it does at the best of times anyway, so that's a real big challenge. But anybody who's just joined the broadcast or anybody who's new to this kind of competition, like a quick update of what to expect here. This is not a race in the most traditional sense, so we're not looking for drivers to go side by side, find ways to overtake each other on the racetrack. It's a time trial event, so as Aidan mentioned, every 15 seconds, the 40 drivers that are registered, 38 that will be starting, will set off in 15-second intervals. And the goal is to get the shortest amount of time possible to the checkered flag, and that's 3 laps. So the drivers will start on pit road. When they get the horn to set off, that's when their timer starts. They will leave pit road. They will go complete 3 laps and 3 pit stops as well. And when they complete that 3 lap, that will be their duration for the event. And basically, the shortest time, with everything completed, will be classified the winner. We will see, Aidan, drivers coming upon their rivals on the racetrack, won't we, over the course of this, if people are having delays or someone's going particularly quick. 15 seconds sounds like a lot. In a 40-minute lap, it's not a lot at all. What happens in that scenario? What's the etiquette in this championship? Do you fight or do you let them go?
I think the etiquette is that they have to pass on a nominated side, which I think is the right. I think it depends on the track, but I think it's just be careful. Don't try anything stupid. You're not racing for first place with the championship on the line. You are driving for 40 minutes a lap and things like that. So they've just got to. It's basically just common sense rules that are just written down, really. But you see, the tram's in there in his Danish Gordini. So we've got a wealth of brands on the track. We'll just go through the entry list. We've got a Bristol 450. We've got a Ferrari 375, Maserati A6, Jaguar D-Type. Gordini's, Aston Martin DB3, which is an awesome car, Mercedes 300 SL. As you can see, Richard Woodcock driving that one in bright orange colour.
Fabulous, by the way, that's bright orange.
Yeah, because he's, in case you didn't know, he's Dutch. We've got a Gordini T24. That's pretty much it. I think we've actually got quite a decent spread of cars, because I think it was at Longford, it was basically the Ferrari Cup and things like that. So the Ferraris basically had the pace in the straight line. But Nate Cowan off in his Bristol 450, and cars starting to fill the roads of Sicily here.
Yeah, it's fabulous as well, isn't it, to see these historic racing names, sometimes names that we don't see anymore in modern motorsport, and to see them reborn, so to speak, in a virtual world and racing on an on-period track to the regulations that we ran back in the 1950s, 1960s. I absolutely adore this whole format, this whole idea, and to see names like Bristol and to see the Jaguar D-Type as well, I think, running in this race and this championship as well. It's just a sensational mod on a fabulous platform and an absolutely incredible idea to put this championship together now as we're looking at the Gordini from the 3-litre class. And Aidan, we spoke a little bit off air as well. Also, if you could put some flavour on this for the audience, you would say, ooh, 5-litre class, that's the fastest. Not necessarily the case in an event like this, is it?
No, it's kind of it's kind of like asking Eddie Hall, the world's strongest man, to go up against Usain Bolt. They're both sportsmen, but one is much bigger than the other, and one trains specifically for that kind of thing. Actually, I think the better comparison would be Usain Bolt against Mo Farah. That would probably be better, because they're both runnists, but one does a different type of running to the other. So one is trained to run 100 meters as fast as possible in a straight line. The other trains to run very, very long and twisty marathon courses. So you think, oh yeah, 5 liters, I'll pick that one because it's the fastest. But if we look at the entry list, Morea, who was the slowest of the 5-litre class, was in 37th overall with a 43:40.977. So yeah, just because you've got the fastest car doesn't mean you'll be going, well, the fastest.
No, it's very much a case of who's got the biggest ghoulies sometimes.
Because
look now, let's have a ride on board with the Ferrari 375 of Jenny Simonchich. Just look how squiggly this car is. It looks quite cautious when you compare it to, say, a Formula style car or a modern GT. You think, the overall speed's not that high, but look how he's squirming on the steering wheel to try and keep in a straight line and acceleration. Look at the road, not perfectly flat. There's cambers, there's dips, and more importantly, folks at home, look to the side of the track when we get away from this unfortunately timed Armco. Massive drops. So one little mistake, one slightly too enthusiastic squirt on the accelerator, and in fact, Aidan, it's not gone invisible. There's a server reset, sir.
Yeah, as people in chat have noticed, that there's a lot of DNFs on the screen, so we're going to reset the server, and we're going to basically have everybody grid and wait, and everybody's going to go in 15-second intervals off the actual start grid. So just to make everything a little bit better. But someone in chat, actually, Greg Best 90 says, some of the meets in Irish road racing, some riders will take a 1600cc bike instead of a 1000cc because it's a lighter bike, it's a more nimble bike, and you can chuck it into the corners a lot harder than you would be able to something that's a bit heavy. You look at the modern Formula 1 cars, how big and heavy and lumpy they are now, 900 plus kilos at the start of the race. compare the 2022 Merc to the McLaren Merc of 2000 or 2001, a lot smaller, and the McLaren just looks a lot faster going through Maggots and Beckett's and Silverstone, for instance.
I also think in an event like this one, it's not like modern circuit motorsport where it's at most a 2-minute lap time and the drivers understand every square inch of the car and the circuit and they're maximising the lap time down to the thousandth of a second. The differentiator here is you, the driver. So the easier you can make it for yourself by having a slightly slower, slightly tamer, tame being completely the wrong word, car, that's going to give you so much more advantage over a 40-minute lap, 10 million corner tour of this circuit. So minimise the amount of fighting that you have to do on the wheel, the amount of traction loss you've got on acceleration, the risk factor of being a little bit too enthusiastic on the loud pedal. Minimise those things, Aidan, and that's going to give you way more lap time than the mechanics of the actual vehicle itself, isn't it?
Yeah, these. I mean, like you said earlier, you tried to drive this car and track combo and you just couldn't. I mean, I'm the same when it comes to driving these older cars because I'm so used to driving touring cars, open wheel cars with. I mean, like a BTCC car does have downforce, but not a lot. But you can still drive it in a similar way to where you drive a Formula 4 car. But as soon as you get into a Lotus 49 or one of these, you have to forget everything you know about driving a Formula car or a GT3 or an LMP2, and you have to retrain your brain. It's the same way I can't do rallying because I'm so used to driving in a particular way, brake, slow in, fast out. But in a rally car, you turn in about 300 yards too early for the corner and power slide your way through it, and it's like I can't get my brain around that, and expecting me to retrain my brain to do that, I just cannot do it.
And I think as well, another aspect to these cars that we just don't see in modern racing, these are manual H-pattern gear shifts. Heel and toe, having to let off the throttle on upshifts, having to blip it on downshift, using the clutch as well. And I dare say, because of the level of driving skill and commitment required to do something like this, I would be almost categorically certain that each and every one of these drivers is using prehistoric gear shifting techniques as well. So when you're waving your arms around like a fool, trying to keep control of a God knows how many horsepower car with a cliff next to you, and you've got to take your hand off the wheel and reach down and make a shift, it's such a specific skill set required to be successful in that kind of environment. And then you've got the spirit of competition on top of it.
Yeah, and Nico Hillebrand, when he was racing at the first 2 rounds of the season, he did it in a polo shirt, goggles, and a hat. Like he full on role played it, and it's on Twitch as well. It looked absolutely incredible. But like you said, with the heel and towing, and you know R Factor 2 pretty well, considering you are R Factor 2 in a way. Blowing the engine if you over rev it too hard, and you blow the engine before the end of the first lap. That's here we go again. As we run into a couple more issues, but you blow the engine before the end of the first lap, and that's it. You're done.
And that's so easy to do. So easy to do, to over rev it on the downshifts, to make a miss shift even. I mean, there's a wealth of hardware out there and available for our sim racers to use, and some gear sticks, are better than others, and I've had lesser quality bits, shall we say, where it's very, very easy to plonk it into what you think's fifth gear and actually it's third, or add one little mistake like that, one miss shift, whoom, bang, bye, all that practice is over and done with.
Yeah, I did a track day at Mallory Park for my 18th birthday in a Formula Vauxhall, and it was a H pattern gearbox, but unlike in a road car where you have to lift the little thing up and then put it into reverse, it didn't have one of those. So I got a push start in the pit lane, but accidentally put the thing into reverse. So when I gave it some beans and dumped the clutch, I immediately went backwards up the pit lane at Mallory. And they had to reach in and they had to physically put it into first for me and then let me drive off, because then it's like, you're not the first person to do that today. So it was it was a bit embarrassing, but it's so easy to do with these things, because they just are so mechanical and they don't have any of the safety features that modern cars do.
And moral of that story is don't buy a second-hand Formula Vauxhall from Mallory Park because each and every one of them have been hammered in reverse gear from a standing start. But yeah, so what's happening? We've got a bit of a server issue. So we're having another restart. Hopefully all the little foibles that have presented themselves will go away. I hope so, because I've just bought a puppy today and I want this to finish so I can go and mess around, stroke it and love it and let it lick me and wee all over the carpet. So, third time we're asking Aidan, do you think we can get going properly?
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's just another thing to point out as we see the word Nino on the road. That's pretty cool. I just got flashbacks to that episode of Kitchen Nightmares, but basically just to point something out that time trials in R Factor 2, this is probably the first time it's been done on a stream, well, apart from the Isle of Man earlier this year, but this is probably the first time that this has been done. It's not really meant for this kind of thing. So we're trying to do stuff to R Factor 2 that it's not really built for. It's a bit like putting paid content into R Factor 2 with the stuff that's going on there as well. So we're trying our best to do what we can, but I mean, in the commentary box ball, it's not really our job. So people a lot smarter than us are working it out. Hopefully, we'll get going very, very shortly.
Yeah, great work, by the way, from everybody behind the scenes to put these things on. As you say, to be fair, R Factor 2 is not built for circuits of this size, nor is it built for the time trial process that we're doing today. So it's a bit of a journey into the unknown, and massive credit to the whole team involved in the historic Road Racing Championship for endeavouring to take on something at this scale for our driving and viewing entertainment. So I'm sure it's very stressful times behind the scenes while we're getting these things up and running. And actually, I really like this format, so I am going to mention this to the developers on Monday. Hey, we need to do something more for this kind of thing. So watch this space. Let's see what happens going forward.
It is good to see the historics. I mean, like personally, I'm not very interested in driving the historic stuff. I know that historics do have their. Well, I think that the oldest thing I probably drive on the regular is a Renault Laguna Super Tourer, but I like or maybe mid '90s Formula One car. But in a sim racing world where, and I mean, you've probably done more than you can count just this year, GT3s. It's like everything, like being a moderately popular YouTuber, I get asked to do a charity event, and they say, "Okay, what cars are we running?" Oh, it's GT3s at Spa. It's, oh God, again, but it's like everything's just GT3, GT3, GT3. So something like this it's needed to show that for sim racing, the sort of things you can put on and how fun it looks great, as well as it must be great to drive as well. So with the esports guys like Yerne and Enzo and Nico and those guys coming in before, you'd expect them to turn up, put all their setup hacks on and dominate, but they haven't. They've just turned up and they've taken it for what it is, which is just a bit of fun on a Saturday afternoon, which is what we need in this sea of GT3 and endurance racing.
Yeah, could not agree more. I mean, GT3s, they're a great concept, they're a great category, fabulous cars, and often produce sensational racing. But we live in a world of, well, in sim racing, we live in a virtual world of absolutely no restrictions. So the fact that we then choose to restrict ourselves to the same things over and over again is borderline bonkers as far as I'm concerned. And I love vintage cars. I love classic motorsport. I am a bit of one of these kind of people that are like, oh, it was better back in the day. That's because it was better back in the day. And I love to see this sort of thing getting a second leash of life because I dare say pretty much everybody racing involved in organising and watching at home were not around when this championship was in its pomp. So to see it presented to a whole new generation of people and reliving the glory years without any of the inherent dangers that sadly befell this kind of thing back in the day when you're racing open public roads in cars where safety features were deemed the domain of the coward. It's just absolutely incredible, and for me it's long live sim racing, long live this sort of event, because to me this is what it is categorically all about.
Yeah, these are 1954 sports cars. My dad was born 2 years later, So even my dad's old, but he wasn't around when these cars were racing. So
Yeah,
yeah, 1954. We're talking nearly 70, well, 68 years ago.
yeah.
It's like, where has the time gone?
But it's great, isn't it, that in 2022 world, there's no way on earth we would be able to. If these cars came out now and this track was in use today, there's no way that this would be allowed to race. It would be deemed well and truly far too dangerous. So it's a period of time, a very wonderful period of time that's consigned to the history books. Read about it in textbooks, watch grainy black and white or really poor quality documentaries on the internet, but we can relive it. As sim racers, we can put ourselves right back in that world and live it all over again. And that's powerful. And that's something that you can become a bit blasé, can't you? That we live in a always connected world nowadays, and you see all these opportunities to do various different things. Often it's cool to take a moment to sit down, smell the roses, and think, this exists. How awesome is that?
I think that's the other good thing about sim racing is that you can race as your heroes or against them. So
Yeah.
I can race as Jim Clark or against Jim Clark, and there is a little bit. I know you get a little bit role play and things like that, and you know it's fake, and you know it's like watching professional wrestling. You know it's fake, but there's still that little bit of it's real to me type of thing. As Alec Ward quite rightly says in chat, is I'm amazed that the TT is still allowed to run, given
Yeah.
that there were 5 people killed this year. That
And
was
every year, to be fair, it's not even a shock,
yeah,
is it, nowadays?
every year except 1983, I think is the but since the end of the war, every year except 1983, there has been at least one death. That is just
But I do think that's also, this is completely the wrong way to say it, but it's a wonderful thing that people are still allowed to take that risk because they choose to. You don't go into the TT being 100% confident that you're going to come out of it again. You know the dangers, you know the risks, and you're big enough and smart enough to weigh up those dangers and risks versus the reward and think, that's worth it to me to have a go. Nobody wants to be injured, nobody wants to be killed for sure. But to give people the choice to participate in that still and not take it away from them is actually a really wonderful thing.
yeah, especially in this when everybody's going, oh, the Big Brother society
Yep.
and all that, and it's like, well, if you want to, I think the attitude is like if you want, if it's your life. No religion, no government decides when you get to check out. You're making the decision, and if you die, so be it. And I think that's the attitude they have is, if I get killed, so be it. I think that was probably an attitude that was shared during the 50s and 60s, but they also had that it always happens to somebody else mentality as well, which is way more blasé than if I die, so be it. But the problem was, this guy was somebody else's somebody else, and it wasn't until the likes of Jim Clark and those guys and Jochen Rindt got killed that they realised, okay, maybe this little, maybe this pious Scot with beady eyes has a point.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was Jackie Stewart that was very much the forerunner of safety in Formula One in particular, but that filtered down to motorsport in general. And often he was criticised by drivers of the day. I don't remember because I wasn't alive then, but looking back, Sterling Moss, somebody I've got a massive amount of respect for and has a good history in this race as well, was incredibly critical of Stewart. Cowardice, talking about seatbelts. He believed that racing should be dangerous. And the fact that the attitudes back then to push back so strongly on Stewart's desire to have basic health and safety. He wasn't asking for things to be watered down. He was just asking to take away the obvious risks, like having medical facilities that are adequate on site, being able to get to a driver quickly enough to intervene where needless fatalities are avoided. And it's so hard for us that are brought up in a much more, I don't know how to word it, in a much less blasé environment nowadays, to think that actually Jackie Stewart asking for people not to be killed every week was tantamount to treason. Is
Yeah.
so hard to get a head around, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit like some of the videos I do where I talk about, yeah, okay, admittedly looking at them in 2020, it's like, how is this allowed to happen? People go, oh, shouldn't you be commentating on the history of golf instead? And it's just like, well, if you think that people dying in racing is cool,
Yeah.
maybe you need to give your head a little bit of a wobble because, well, I mean, like my favourite story of that whole safety thing is Jackie Hicks was one of those guys who, like Sterling Moss, thought that Jackie Stewart was mental, and he was like, because he was a young racer and had no care. And 1969 Le Mans, he walked to his GT40. It was the last one away from the old Le Mans start, and by the end of that lap, somebody else was dead.
Yeah.
But Jackie Hicks
Crazy.
took the time to get his seatbelt on and did all of that stuff, and he ended up winning as well, which is even more incredible.
Yep, absolutely crazy. So, folks, I've seen a little message. I don't really know what to continue that conversation on with, Aidan, so I'm going to throw back to you so you can tell everybody we're coming back.
We're coming back. We are coming. Apologies for the delay in getting this event started. We had a few issues with the old server, but it's kind of like the mechanical issues of the sim racing world. So if you have recently just joined in and wondered what the hell is going on today, we are here for the Historic Road Racing Champ Dot, which is from the Targa Florio. Yes, we are doing the Targa Florio. 44 miles of driving around Sicily in time trial format, which is kind of a first for R Factor 2. It's not something that R Factor 2 really does, but we've done it already at the Isle of Man, so why not do it again on a slightly longer track? You can see the map there on the right hand side of the little graphic there. Barely fits on. You can barely see it because I've had to shrink it down so much, but you can see all those twists and turns and that super long straight right at the end. So we're expected to get going in a few minutes. With me is R Factor 2's own Paul Jeffrey, who is here for the first event of the season. Actually tried to qualify for this event, but found that the cars are just a little bit tricky, aren't they, Paul?
Absolutely, that's completely and utterly wrong. I knew that I would dominate the event with my superb racecraft and behind-wheel skills, so elected to give everybody else a chance. No, you're right, these cars are incredibly hard, Aidan. Incredibly hard, incredibly exciting. And I said it on the first attempt at start, but just in case you're joining that one a little bit later on, it is sensational that this kind of event is being held by GP Labs, the Historic Road Racing Championship. 1950 sports cars on such an incredible circuit as this one. And I could not be more excited to join you in this here virtual commentary box for the very first time together to talk through the thrills, spills, and no doubt dramas that are going to unfold over the next couple of hours' time.
Yeah, we're going to be in for a good one. It's great to see that the sort of buzz that this event, well, say the event, the whole championship is created, because we were talking earlier about how everything is just GT3, yawn. But to see a league where the historic racing purists are loving it, but even people that are more interested in the modern stuff have looked at it and going, "You're doing what? You're driving that? Why? How are people surviving? Why aren't people dead? Why aren't how is it?" And they tune in and they watch it. To have people like Jerne Simoncic on the grid for this race and not doing what everybody expected, is like, oh yeah, esport, he's going to turn up and run his setup hacks, do 10 billion laps and just cruise it. But he's not. He's just turning up. He's having a bit of fun. And for those guys as well, it is exactly that. It's just a really good reminder that sim racing is fun. And we see like the really big championships like Virtual Le Mans. Yeah, it's great, but there's a lot of try-harding in it. And, well, a series without try-harding is always a lot more fun, wouldn't you say?
Hear to that statement. Absolutely. We often forget, as things become bigger and more popular, business gets involved, sponsorship, prizes to be won, and careers to be made in a virtual world. We often forget the most important factor is have some fun. That's why we do this. That's why we spend so long. People like Aidan creating video content, myself working for Studio 397 that do R Factor, the guys and girls behind the scenes that put on championships like this, the people that go drive it, the modders, the livery designers, the content creators. We do it because we love it. And I'll tell you something for nothing. Every single driver in this field loves what they do, including this man, our first driver to start the race.
Isidoro Hrrc, who won his class at the Isle of Man the last time trial we did. He's off first, and the cars will be released in a 15-second interval. And basically, the track will just basically get more and more filled up, and hopefully nobody will crash into each other as they go around. Darren Andrews has been released also. We think everybody is in the server. Yeah, everything is. Just checking the Discord. Everything seems to be fine. Getting green lights all over the place, and yeah, we're finally going, Paul. We're finally seeing these great drivers. One of them right there on your bottom right-hand corner of your screen, Jerne Simoncic, driving his Ferrari, 5-litre Ferrari, around a stunningly recreated Sicily here.
Yep, absolutely brilliant stuff. And this does pose a good question I'd like to ask you, Aidan, if I can. We've obviously had a quite tasty delay now from when we initially expected to be getting the first green flag and on our merry way. So some of these drivers, the front runners that we're seeing, or the first starters, should I say, that we're seeing on screen, have already gone and done a portion of the lap before we had to have the server reset. How does that affect the mindset of these competitive drivers? Having to be all pumped up and ready to go, and then a down period they weren't expecting, and then lift themselves back up for the monumental challenge, it has to be said, of 3 laps of this beast of a racetrack.
Well, I was watching one of my mates, Daniel Finney, racing in it was a race room league based on their sort of 2022 F1 cars, and it was hosted by Alex Young of all people. And they had server issues for their race at Imola, and it was basically a case of, okay, we've got a delay. You just got to suck it up and deal with it, and when the time comes, just do what you do. You got to try and get into that mindset, because I'm a fidgeter. I mean, right now I've got something in my hands. I have to have something in my hands all the time, and I'm always fidgeting. And I did Formula Pro commentating on that for Traction back in May or June or whenever it was, and under the table fiddling with a pen because I have to have something in my hands. And you sort of get into that antsy feeling, and when the time comes, you just go like, right, just get on with it. You know what to do. You can do it. Just do it.
Yeah, it's switching the mentality on and off, and that's often what makes a difference, isn't it, between a good driver and an exceptional driver, is their ability to turn it on immediately, on demand. No warm-up, no routine, but a bit like the rally mentality, isn't it? A scenario thrown in front of you, you've got to balance that, you've got to cope with it, and then you've got to go out there and do the business. And this race in these cars is, I think it's fair to say, Aidan, probably a heck of a lot more difficult than your quote-unquote bog standard modern motorsport race.
Just a bit. I mean, we were talking earlier about how with these older cars you have to change everything you know about driving a modern car, and change your driving style, and how some people can't get their heads around it. I think some people as well thrive under pressure. There are those kinds of drivers that will struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle in practice, and then as soon as the time comes to qualifying, they then go and bang in a lap 7/10 of a second faster than they ever could in practice. So some people just can do it. Some people do choke under the pressure. So it's kind of a, at this point, you're not looking at so much the driving skill, but what's going on in that orb atop their shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. So we're looking at Nate Cohen now, the top screen that you can see there from the United States of America in the Bristol 450. And we spoke about this again earlier in the show, but I think it bears repeated. We've got multiple classes here, Aidan, haven't we? So there's multiple different categories, and that means there's very different cars and very, very different obstacles to overcome for these drivers.
Absolutely, because we've got 5 litre class, which is obviously the most powerful class. I mean, we won't necessarily say the fastest class, because it was a 2 litre class car that was the top 2 positions in pre-qualifying. If I just consult my piece of paper, Isidoro and Darren Andrews were faster than the man that's on the bottom right hand corner of the screen, Jernej Simicic, who is in a 5 litre car. So Jernej will basically grab all of the time back on that super long straight that should be coming up at some point in the lap. We can't actually tell where they are at the minute, because we've tried. We have honestly tried to figure out how to get around this track, and we just can't. It's absolutely mental, this place. But everywhere else, the more nimble 2 litre car, which isn't putting as much power down and is lighter, and you can lob it into a corner harder, is coming way back. And Oscari Kantanen, Alberto Oscari as we're calling him now, actually won at Dundrod last time.
Exactly, and he's running in the 3 litre class, if memory serves me correct, or is that 2 litre class actually?
2. Yeah,
the
he won in the slowest car.
So that just says everything I think the folks at home need to understand, doesn't it, about a championship like this. It's not about the fastest car, it's about what you can cope with as a driver, how you can maximise both the lap time and minimise the mistakes. I mean, again, we're looking on board now with Kantanen. You can see, even, and I say it's only 2 litre, it's still such a wild drive, isn't it? The car is bucking over the bumps, it's trying to push you off the racetrack every time you press the brake or the accelerator. There's no such thing as an easy time in one of these cars, even in a straight line. It's probably more difficult to keep it on the straight and narrow than let's say a Formula car would be in a traditional race series.
Yeah, these cars, no downforce, very little mechanical grip, bias-ply tyres that would have to be actually on the side of an active volcano to actually get any heat in them. And Ascari Cantona, well, I mean, he's finished, so he's probably used to chucking cars around, the whole rally mentality. So he's loving life out there at the minute. You've got Simicic currently 4th overall, but I mean, like, just ignore all of that because they're not actually racing. It's a time trial, and R Factor 2 doesn't quite have the facilities to be able to have a time trial yet. I'm sure you're going to be having some words on Monday morning, Paul, with a sort of a programmers meeting and stuff like that. Because
bet your bottom dollar on that one, because this is
the
amazing
sort of stuff that we need. Yeah. So laser scan Pikes Peak when?
Yeah, chance would be a fine thing. But these cars look beautiful. Anybody who's become so accustomed to modern racing who doesn't watch historics in real life, look how lively these cars are. The suspension's compressing over the bumps, the tyres are so stiff, so the car's jumping over every imperfection in the road, and there is a public road system, so it's not billet table smooth like you see on a grade 1 FIA circuit, for example. This has got all the imperfections of the road. It's got the cambers, we're going uphill, down dale, the car's trying to throw the driver off. Look at that, kicking the grass up at the rear end, steps out, controls the car on the opposite lock, and then fighting to keep the grip, try and put the power down through the tyres on the tarmac. It is such a visually and audibly spectacular experience, these vintage cars, on a track. Well, it's not even a track, it's a public road that's been used for a racetrack. It's just everything that is emotive and inspiring about motor racing, all wrapped up in one really awesome little virtual racing package.
Well, in the days when they were running this track, the drivers had to learn it while they were still public roads. So they'd have to drive around at the speed limit, and they would have to drive around following all the traffic laws, and it would take them probably about 2 hours to complete a lap because they were driving around. And I think it was something like Porsche. They actually just watched a video of like the previous year or something like that, and then just memorized it. So to learn a track of this length and know where every corner is, you see Canton's getting a tiny bit of air over it. It's almost like he's got his co-driver saying 3 left into crest and into jump and things like that. As Real Deal God, the last driver to leave the start-finish line here, the pit lane just there on the right-hand side, should be pitting every lap, and hopefully Real Deal God has a better time out there than he did last time at Duntrod, where he was parked on an embankment for about 10 minutes and eventually got punted off that by another driver who just ended up being in the wrong place at the wrong time, as Isadoru. That's a very nice shot, that one, just coming over the crest of a hill, the Argentine driver. I think we're seeing where the apexes are. There's one there somewhere.
We saw that as well, where you said he caught a little bit of air. That's something we've not even spoken about. Because it is a public road, it is very, very easy to get the wheels off of the ground. And again, old suspension, very soft compared to a modern race car. As soon as you land, it doesn't really absorb it. It kind of just fires you back up in the air again, and you've got to know where these crests are and where these bumps are, and filter that into the equation of how you're going to then manage the next section of corners, because these, again, I keep saying it, public road, so these little bumps and jumps, for want of a better word, don't happen in the middle of the straight. They can happen just before a corner, so you've got to get on the brakes before the car gets up in the air, then set it up for the body roll, set up the weight of the car to throw it into the next turn. It's such a technically difficult experience to be clean around a lap like here, isn't it?
It's not like you can do a track walk, is it?
Yeah. Well, you could, I suppose, with a free cam, but that would take a fortnight to get all the way around.
It would take a many long time.
I'm just seeing, by the way, Aidan, John Miller in the comments, hello John to you, has just said that Jake has been in the barrier. So hopefully he's not carrying any damage, because this early in the session, that's a long way to go with a car that's hobbled.
It's Ferrari got away from following traffic laws. What do you think? They got caught, and even then in the pits you don't argue with family. That's true.
Yeah. Here is Jake actually on screen now in the beautiful, my favourite car from this era, the D-Type Jaguar. Stunning car. I'd like to make an assessment on whether he's got damage by the sort of behaviour of the car, but these things are all over the place anyway. So that could be crabbing or could be perfectly normal. You really can't tell because it's Playday's bus, isn't it, on the wheel? Seesaw, seesaw, seesaw.
Oh, that is a reference and a half. I've got the theme tune in my head now. That's cool.
Yeah, but it means nothing to anyone that's not based in the UK. So
Yeah.
look it up. Playday's introduction video, and you'll see the bus where he's wildly sawing the wheel but going in a straight line. That's exactly what driving one of these is like.
I made a reference to the whole Max versus Checo thing. It's like, if Max wanted payback, he needs Dave Benson Phillips and a gunge tank. And I'm just thinking, everybody under the age of 25 is not going to get that. But that car looks... That car looks fine. He might have knocked the toe out a tiny bit. Oh, there we go, deja vu. He's, yeah, like you say, there's so much play in that steering. It's amazing how it turned into any of the corners.
See, I'm watching this now thinking, why am I sat in my freezing cold office commentating on it and not out there on the track? Because this is the personification of what fun looks like, ladies and gents. You can keep your downforce cars, you can keep your modern race cars. This is where it's at. This sort of thing. You're not racing physically, you're not fighting for a piece of tarmac with your rivals, but my goodness me, you're exerting every bit of skill you've got to try and navigate around this amazing track in these sensational cars.
No, I think I'd rather drive a newer one. At least I can mask my skill issues in a modern car.
They are a very different kettle of fish altogether. Actually, this is probably a good juncture to mention, this is not official first-party content for R-Factor 2. This is a mod. And I just want to say, a humongous... I'm not going to name check, because I don't know exactly all of the people involved in this. I've heard of a couple of the guys I mentioned. But for the people that made this mod, I doff my cap to you, gents, because A, it's a huge mod in terms of size. B, it's a niche category in which to do, but people like you that make things like this is what makes motor racing and sim racing. Ooh.
Ooh. That's a time penalty. Cutting corners. Thinks just because he's running the league, he can do what he wants. SMH.
And that was very fortunate to go off where it did, because that can very often lead to a sheer drop over the other side of a mountain in an instant like that, or into an immovable object. So yeah, Jake, not be pleased too much about being off track, but if you're going to go off somewhere, that's one of the better places in which to do it.
And just going back to the whole point about the length of this track and how much space it would take up in R-Factor 2, the track's 44 miles long. I think it's got to be the longest track in sim racing. As Ascari Canton is catching up to someone ahead of him. It's catching up to Yerny Simic. So here we go again with Ascari Canton is in the slowest class car on paper, and that's Yerny Simic ahead of him.
I don't see that very often, do you?
No.
Simic being closed down by somebody. Be interesting though. This is one I'm fascinated to see play out. Because as you say, Kantanen in the 2 litre class, the slower car, versus Simic in the 5 litre class, the car that goes quicker in a straight line. He's clearly faster at this stage, is Kantanen, but how do you safely navigate your way around the car in front should you be able to close up to it? Because Simic is just going to blast straight past on the next piece of straight tarmac. This is not a comfortable position for Ascari to be in, is it?
Yeah, it's basically just common sense overtaking rules. As my phone's buzzing. Oh, it's 1-1 now. Okay.
Spoiler alert for the 3 people that care about that result.
Yeah, we'll lose 3-1 now. As we see Scooby in the orange Ferrari. seeing the cars painted in the national colours of the driver, or the colours of the manufacturer, or some of them painting it in the region of the country that they live in. As basically saying that overtaking is going to be basically just common sense. You know, if Symmetric sees that Cantonen is catching him, they'll just let him go, and just there's no point in fighting because you're not actually racing. You're just setting a time, and if you lose, you're going to lose time battling anyway, or you're going to end up in the wall. So just let him go, concentrate on what you need to do.
Sadly, in the world, common sense is not that common. So let's see how that transpires. I'm sure Yeri, of course, has been around more than long enough to know what's good for his overall results. But it's so difficult, isn't it? Because if the car's all over you, you let them go, but then you get to the next straight, and because it's a 5 litre versus a 2 litre, you kind of monster in the back of the slower in a straight line car. Again, it's like, what do you do? Do you go past? Do you hold station? Are you comfortable enough in your knowledge of the circuit to know if there's a corner coming up or not, or if you can gap the car behind? So these are all the aspects of this race that the drivers have got to filter into their armoury. That'll be a relatively new skill set for them, because you don't really get this kind of behaviour even in multi-class endurance racing. The differential between the two classes is so great that normally if there's a lapping or an overtaking situation, it's done and done, and that's the last time you think about it. Here, this is one that could go on and on for quite some time, even if the relative pace of the two cars is very different, because they get their lap time in very different ways.
Yeah, as we see again, Rhys Gardner, 2 litre class, Southpaw racer, chasing down Scooby in the 5 litre class. So the 2 litres, I'm about to sneeze. There we go. The 2 litre class.
Spooky, I've just done the same thing. I've just muted myself to do the same thing.
Am I Chromecasting to you or something like that? But again, like the 2 litre class catching the 5 litre class. So just because you've got the fastest car in a straight line doesn't mean you're going to be quick everywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all down to, as I said before during the course of this broadcast, a lot of this not down to the machinery. It's not like traditional modern motor racing where the drivers know every bit of the racetrack and the car and they're fighting for the last thousandth of a second. The margins are so much wider, or narrower should I say actually, on tracks like this. The challenge is so different and the circuit's so much longer that you're not looking for thousandths of a second, you're looking for seconds. And a difference between a good lap and a moderate lap can be 10, 15 seconds at a time. So it's not so much about the machinery, it's about how confident you are, how strong you are, and how much you can minimise dramas, mistakes. A mistake in a Grand Prix circuit in a Formula 1 car is run wide and lose 3/10 of a second. A mistake here is go for a picnic somewhere in a field many kilometres away from the tarmac and wave goodbye to any chance of a good result. So very different challenge, and that's what makes it all the more fascinating.
There we go, Real Deal God making a move, making his way. I would say he's making his way through the field, but we've got, again, this is how much of a mind bender that this this format is. We're so used to commentating on cars overtaking each other, right? We're used to cars racing. We're not used to cars setting lap times, as I'm simultaneously trying to commentate while working out that my automatic moderating bot on chat is blocking the word Italy because I set it up the day after the Euros last season. So as Real to God passes the 19-kilometre mark with a 1,137 second purple first sector.
If I commentate for another 20 years, I dare say I'll never get a timed screen like that again. It's just everything about this event, this track, these cars, this championship, it's just bonkers, isn't it? But in a really wonderful way.
It just makes it even more funny because we're racing in Italy and people can't even say where the track is. So I fixed that. I've now just got to take the bit out where it says that I'm racing a Formula 4 car. Shows how often I stream, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's all good stuff. And hello, by the way, to everybody who's watching on the stream. It's nice to have you with us today. Welcome to the show. Welcome to vintage motor racing, but in the most modern of platforms possible. sim racing. What a great combination. I think we've spoken about this already, but I'm going to say it again because I like to bang that drum. Isn't it amazing in today's day and age that we can be watching a guy from Australia racing a 1950s Maserati on a computer in a virtual environment on this track in this championship? That blows my mind a little bit.
It does. The fact that somebody, I mean, I don't know how far Australia is from here, but it's quite far. But we've got an Argentine, an Australian, a Slovenian, a Finn, 2 Americans, Germans, Dutch, Danes. It's very much a worldwide sport, and because they're all using national colours as well, everything's really colourful, and everything's as it would have been in 1954. There's no over the top, eye-catching liveries that are all made up of perfectly straight lines, and everything's super modern. There's no fake sponsor logos or anything. It's just the colours of. So we've got a German in a British racing green Aston Martin. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really does. I wonder where we've seen that one before. Hopefully, has a slightly better time of it than the other German in the Aston Martin has been having of late. Although I am a big fan of Seb Vettel, I must say, and I will miss him greatly when he retires at the end of the season. But again, another really awesome mark to see represented in this package. Aston Martin, famed for their storied history in endurance and GT racing of the DB5, obviously an iconic car as well, and the Maserati that we're looking at now for Canton. So again, 2-litre class, 4th on the road at this moment in time, but judging by the body language of the car and the fact that we saw him earlier on closing up onto the Ferrari of Semichik ahead, seems like he's having a very tasty start to his campaign, it must be said. In fact, he's coming up on somebody else. Is that Andrews ahead of him that he's coming up to?
That's Canton, that's still Simic ahead of him.
Oh, is it still Simic?
Yeah.
I'm seeing Ferrari and not seeing red, and it's just boggled my mind a little bit, so I'm quite sure what's going on there. It's been a long day already.
I didn't even know Slovenia had racing colours, so this is the other cool thing to see, is that you're seeing racing colours that you might not have thought exist. We had like cyan and yellow for Ukraine a few times already this season, which is great to watch considering what's been going on over there at the minute. Hope everything's okay for those people as well as Mantas Isganatis in the 5-litre Lagonda, which is a great one to choose. There's a bit of dust being kicked up. I think someone's bought the proverbial farm. It's Oscar 1 that went off.
Am I right in thinking Mantas is one of the guys that are responsible for the physics aspect of this mod?
I believe he is, yeah.
Yeah, so going back to what we were saying earlier before Jake went grass tracking and rudely interrupted my little speech to Mantas and everybody involved. Thank you so much for bringing this set of content to reality, because it really is. If you're watching at home and you've not tried this yet, be prepared to be frustrated because it's different from everything you've ever tried. But do yourself a favour, go onto Steam, go onto the R Factor 2 Steam Workshop, download this 1954 endurance mod, I think it is, because these cars are different to anything you've ever driven before, but are absolutely sensational.
We'll try and think of anything else to add to that, because it's something you can't really describe until you've driven it. It's one of those weird things. There's plenty of wildlife in the fields. Whoa, Yerney! That's an e-sport line.
Yes, and this is what we were saying, isn't it, at the top of the show? A lot of this is going to be about how willing some of these drivers are to take chances, the risk versus reward measurement here, and Simoncic's there absolutely looking for every opportunity to gain an advantage possible, and that was, I dare say, you're not going to see many people trying that over the course of the next 3 laps. So just goes to show we're having some fun, but he wants to win this bad boy, doesn't he?
If he meant to do that as well.
I'm giving him benefit of the doubt. I'm sure it's not a Code Brown moment where he's gone, whoa, that was closer than I'd like it to be. I'm sure that was all planned.
It's like a scene from The Matrix where he runs along the wall, isn't it?
I'm sure that he's got eyes like dustbin lids after that one, though. I must say that would be that would. This is when you say it's hard to describe these cars. I would describe it like this: this is fun, this is fun, this is fun, this is scary, this is scary, this is scary, this is fun, this is fun, this is fun, this is scary, this is scary, this is scary. That's pretty much what goes through your mind the entire time that you're driving.
I can't wait to see them try and go through Indianapolis at Le Mans next time out. It's like, you're not in an LMP2, you're not in an LMP2. Oh, I've overcooked it.
It's so easy to do that, though. I did, as I mentioned off air to Aidan and the guys before we came on, before I got asked to do this commentary for the event today, I discovered this championship just by chance through Jake's GP Laps YouTube channel and thought, whoa, this is for me, this is amazing. Went and downloaded the mod. I have no idea why I'd overlooked the mod up to this point, an absolute fool, and I will beat myself senseless for missing it. Got the cars. Dundrod was the track that they just raced on, so I thought, well, I'll do the same track, because I've not tried that one either, yippee-ki-yay. And it was so difficult, so incredibly hard. Not to go quickly, not to be competitive, just to drive the damn things. And you get to the point where the brakes, the braking distances are so much longer than a modern car. The grip is so much sparse than a modern car, and the tracks are so much more dangerous that you brake massively early. You get the car down to what you think snail's pace for the hairpin. You turn in, nothing happens, and you go say hello to a banking, and you think, surely that's almost walking pace that I'm at. So you've really got to recalibrate everything, every bit of muscle memory, everything you know. And because the cars are so primitive, if you're braking just a little teeny bit too late, there's no extra giving it, is there, to think, oh god, stamp on the brake and pivot the rear end. No, ain't gonna happen. If you've missed your braking point, then you've got 150, 200 yards to say, looking forward to this accident, and then go and have the accident. It's bonkers.
At least at Dundrod there were a few corners that were junctions of a road, so there was a bit to overshoot, and then you just sort of casually flick it around and carry
every one of those.
Yeah. I might have to take the 66 Brabham round there at some point or something like that, because it's just crazy. You had to be a special breed of insane to do this, especially given the risks involved compared to modern racing, and to the fact that if you had a crash, there was like a 66% chance you weren't coming back from it, and all that stuff. It must have been incredible to watch.
Well, I think that's an interesting.
That's why we need a time machine.
For sure, and I think that's actually an interesting point. I'm sure, and I apologise in advance if I'm teaching anybody here to suck eggs watching the broadcast, but anybody who's maybe not that familiar with the history, the long and exciting history of motorsport, and they're watching this broadcast, this is not a fantasy track. This is not something that we've gone, oh look, how cool's that? They're using a custom-built racetrack. Not a map, by the way, when people call racetrack maps, that really irritates me. This is a real track. This is a real race. Yeah, exactly. This took place in real life. Those trees at the side of the road, that's not for artistic license. That's what it was like. And these drivers with, as you can see, no gloves on, no fire suits and overalls, a helmet that is probably less effective than the helmet that you ride on your bike, your push bike, nowadays. And they went racing at 200 mile an hour in cars that would absolutely love to spit you off into the scenery.
They were polo helmets. I know Sterling Moss wore a horse racing helmet.
Unbelievable. Mike Hawthorne used to race in a dicky bow tie and an evening suit.
Yeah, it's like that's not gonna. All that's gonna do is just identify you when they peel you off the tarmac afterwards.
He's basically wasn't for safety. It was just to keep your head warm.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's gonna have like no benefit to you. Even if you fell down while walking through the paddock, it's not going to help your cause. So it's just to keep your head warm. Make sure you look nice when you get for the cameras afterwards. Keep soot out of your hair.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be invited to Silverstone the other week with Radical, and I only went out for 15 minutes on the, in the SR1 and the SR10, and I had a full crash helmet, hands device, bally, the works. And that was just for a 50-minute track day. and they went to all of that length.
Yeah.
But then they didn't even have seatbelts at this point because they
Well, that
took
was
the
the thing,
chance on
wasn't
being
it?
ejected from the car and potentially breaking your pelvis and a couple of bones, as opposed to being burned alive when the fuel tank ruptured.
And that's the weird thing, going back to the conversation we had earlier about the Jackie Stewart crusade for safety. It was much, much preferable for drivers to be flung as far away from the car as they can get in order to avoid the ever-present danger of fire. And when seatbelts were sort of not mandated, but brought in as a more common, more accepted form of safety measure in a race car, almost everybody was up in arms saying how ridiculous to strap yourself into one of these machines. You want the mentality is just you can't you can't compute it. I can't even articulate it, and I like talking. I find it difficult to even get my head around that, to speak the words that you don't want a safety harness because it's safer to fly at 60 mile an hour with your polo helmet on and your dinner jacket than it is to stay inside the car, because safety cells, not even unheard of back then.
We are looking at it with 2022 eyes, aren't we? So it's probably easy for it, but it's like even at that point you must think, come on. You think of I think John Surtees took one look at that magnesium Honda and just went no, because that's going to involve a massive accident, and first race it entered, massive accident.
I forget the name now because one of the drivers lost their life in that car, didn't he? I forget the name of
Joe Schlesser.
Ah, there you go.
So,
well done.
someone did a video on it recently.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. We've come along a long way. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. I am a fan, I must say, of the element of danger. I must admit, I do. That does attract me. Not because I want to see people killed or injured, of course I don't, but I do like the whole, are you willing and brave enough and confident enough in your own ability to put yourself in that zone where bad things can happen? Because those that are good enough to do that time in, time out are the ones that really rise to the top of the tree. So I do like that element, and that's why I like this, because no one's going to get hurt. Worst things can happen is you hit the wall, your force feedback bruises your fingers. So you've got all the joy. It does hurt. It hurts a lot. When I first got a direct drive wheel, I was one of the many idiots that thought it was cool to have it turned up. And yeah, you try and restart a session in R-Factor 2, still holding the wheel, thinking it's cool to have high DD force.
I bruised the top of my hand when it snapped and clanged into me. It's like the corner of a Formula rim as well. That hurt a lot.
And there's always some tool at the end of a race where you pull up at the side to escape and thinks it's clever to ram into you at full speed. It's always an idiot.
That actually got written in to the rule book of the race All-Star Battle back when the lockdowns were on. They said that if anybody is seen doing, and I quote, comedy crashing at the end of a race would be penalised.
Comedy crashing.
It always made me chuckle when I read it.
Imagine Emerson Fittipaldi reading that one, thinking, what's comedy crashing?
Jason Plato just going, challenge accepted.
Yeah, comedy crashing, I made a career on that. That's how I overtake.
He will be missed.
Oh, he will. Yeah, for sure. I would have loved to have seen him break the 100 mark. I think he ended on 97 wins.
97. Yeah, his last win was the 2019 Brands Hatch Race 3.
In the venerable Vauxhall Astra.
When Dan Cam had his brakes just die on the final lap.
Again, Aidan, we're talking about regional specific things here.
Yeah, we are.
Anybody internationals lie, I have no idea who Jason Plato is and why.
Buy the BTCC content in R-Factor 2. There we go. Yes. Nice segue.
Buy it twice.
Yeah.
So, we're still on the first lap.
Yeah, we are.
How crazy is that? We've been going for quite some time now, and we've not even broke a lap. So, can we talk a little bit about fuel and tyres?
Yes.
What happens in this situation?
So, they have fuel and they have tyres, as any car does, well, apart from electric cars, but we don't talk about those. The problem is, how long does the tank last? I reckon they will have to pit every lap because it won't do 2 laps. But the tyres, as Ascari Sliderino, they will have to pit every lap because it won't do more than 2 laps, which is, yeah, that's just testament to how long this lap is. Before, fuel and tyres were on like X2, X3 just to necessitate the fact that you would have to pit, as the drivers were told are coming through into Sector 3 right now, so we should see the end of the first lap momentarily. It's just, are they going to be coming in for a splash of jungle juice?
Now, as a driver that's obviously, well, as an individual like yourself that's been involved in this series from the off, this is my first one, so I'm a little bit green to the whys and wherefores and the good, the bad and the uglies. Would you want to put a set of fresh boots on when you come for your fuel? No. It's not good. It's going to be a negligible difference.
They're bias ply tyres. They last longer than
years.
Plastic, so
there's no benefit whatsoever from absolutely brand spanking sticker tyres then?
I think you're probably better off just putting in 40 minutes worth of fuel to complete that 1 lap, so your car's sort of slightly lighter at the start, so for a little bit of extra speed and easier on the brakes, and then just top it up every time you go through.
So we're expecting kind of 3 pit stops, and the timing for these events works where it's the entire duration of the 3 laps, including stops, from beginning to end, will dictate who the winner is rather than track position, isn't it?
Yeah. So you could have someone like Scooby, who's now in 20th on the road as Bergier makes an overtake. The car that was ahead of him just getting out of the way, so that would have been Mr. Magoo, who's gone out of his way.
Nice bit of respectful driving there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Just move out of the way, don't fight. Focus on what you're doing. It's almost like the private qualifying you can have in R-Factor 2, except you can see everybody else. Just worry about what you're doing.
And I think
Jake's in the wall, apparently.
Oh, it's been a bad...
He's visited the wall.
Been a bad first lap, really, for Jake, hasn't it? A couple of times he's made contact with something solid, and also we saw him grass tracking a little bit earlier on. There he is in the top picture, in picture screen, from the United States. No time, of course, because he's not completed that first lap yet, and we're just hearing in our ear as well that Ascari's gone off. So not quite sure exactly what happened there. We can see him in the bottom screen as well. So Ascari Cantonen, currently one of the stars of the championship, racing in the 2-litre class, but still very much in contention for the outright victory, has had himself a little incident. And if you're watching at home and thinking, oh no, mistake, that's game over. No. A race like this, at this length, expect every driver to go and visit the scenery 1 or 2 times. The key here is try and avoid damage and try and recover the car back to the track as quickly as possible. It's not really a case of the fastest driver is going to be the winner. It's the driver who makes the least mistakes. We're looking at Isidro at this moment in time, the Argentine driver, currently at the top of the field, the first one on the road, but we'll not know the timing set up really until the conclusion of the race, because as I say, it's 3 laps, but it's the overall race time will dictate the winner. So much of this one is just bringing it through, as there we go, our first pit stop of the day. The man at the front of the field, exactly as Aidan and I mentioned, down in pit lane at the end of the first lap, get some more fuel in, put another 40 minutes, give or take, worth of juice into the tank, and then off you go on your merry way. Tyre temperatures will have dropped, but they're always low anyway, so that's not really too much of a problem. And then get back out again, and we see Simoncic coming through the final portion of the lap now. Got about 30 seconds or so worth of lap left before he too will dive down pit lane and get himself a few cans of the go-go juice into his beautiful Ferrari 375. And there we go, that is Simoncic in pit lane as we speak and getting his fuel. And there is Cantonen in the 2-litre class. So Cantonen's managed to stay with the Ferrari all the way through pretty much the duration of that lap and get himself very firmly in the picture. And Aidan, first stops have been made. We've done it, sunshine. Lap 1 ticked off the books.
Nice.
We're in business now.
Right, we've just got another 80 minutes to go.
But it's gone fast though. That first 40-minute lap actually for something. I was kind of came into this first time I've commentated over an event like this, where, as you rightly said earlier, it's not battling for track position, it's battling for lap time, and I was a little bit curious as to how this would transpire in terms of a visual prospect. It's been a heck of a lot of fun already.
Yeah, this is what we were saying at Spa and at wherever the fuck, Longford as well. It's just like, oh, are we really this far into the race already? It's just gone absolutely flying by. So it's always good that you think, oh, it's just going to drag. It's 44 miles and things like that. As Hrrc Keeper comes into the pits, makes a little bit of contact. I think he's forgotten that collisions exist in R-Factor 2 pit lanes.
Oh, that would be so painful, wouldn't it?
Oh, that happened to me at it was Formula Pro. Well, that's not Formula Pro. Formula Challenge at Silverstone. I was making a pit stop, or was it a Spa? It was one of the races, and a guy went round the outside of my pit box because at the last second he remembered that there was collision. So I was so close to being wiped out. And it's always funny when people come over from other sims and then try to drive through everybody and then just get absolutely wiped out. As Dion Hansen, a full oppo, chasing Jake in front of him.
Now here's something interesting that Liam from the back office has mentioned in our Discord chat. It looks like Jackson is going for 2 laps on a single tank, so he's not come down pit lane to fuel up. And allegedly, every one of these cars, regardless of whatever engine classification you're in, are marginal on fuel. That's a brave move. Potentially, that could be a big move for a result. It could also be a great way to say goodbye to any prospect of finishing this race.
He's just going to be constant lifting and coasting down the hills, isn't he? Just like put the clutch in and let it roll down.
Just see Matthew 2779 in chat saying, what game or sim is this? It is R-Factor 2, sir, that we're racing on, and it's the Targa Florio and the 1954, is it? The endurance mod for the cars, 54, 55. So, yeah, go check it out on Steam. I worked for R-Factor 2, by the way, so I'm incredibly biased, but I do think
so
it's
biased.
Fabulous. Oh yeah, for sure. But it's a fantastic sim. So loads of different content, many different types of cars, from endurance to IndyCar to Formula cars to vintage and touring cars and the like. So yeah, get yourself over there and have a look, and do yourself a favour, because it's a little rabbit hole of wonderfulness.
And one thing that R-Factor 2 does have that might come into play, and I say might in a like with loads of inverted commas on it, is the railroad system. So as they drive along, there's going to be a little bit more rubber on the track at the end of the event compared to the start of the event. So they're going to be sliding around quite a lot to start with, but as this goes on, there will be a little bit more grip available to them. And it's not sort of like, okay, this is the defined rubber line and then it will just go up by 1% every time you drive over it as the session progresses. Where you drive depends on where that rubber is laid. So if you were to go to Daytona, for example, and drive 100 laps just going around the inside, you'll see the rubber build up. And if you go and do it again around the outside, rubber will build up there as well. And you just have green track and marbles in the middle. So hugely dynamic system that does play an effect in qualifying races and events like this, where the track will have started as a totally green track. So that's why they're sliding around a lot, because not because they're 5-litre cars with loads of torque and very little grip, but because there is no rubber on the track, and once that rubber gets on, it might get a tiny bit more grip and a tiny bit more pace, but they've still got to keep the car out of the wall.
That makes it yet more of an adventure. Every single corner is a bit like rallying, isn't it? Every time around it's a little bit different, and because we've got such a wide variety of potential lines, I mean, the very, very best of them will be taking the racing line, but these cars are such a handful, and this track is such a bizarre scenario for a lot of these drivers. It's not really about light, it's more about just hustling it around without hitting anything. So there'll be a wide selection of different rubber-in parts of the racetrack, and it's going to be really interesting to see as the event progresses and the dynamicism of everything starts to play out, if that's going to bring other people into the picture, as Matt Ziedler now from the United States serves his pit stop in the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, an iconic car you could possibly wish to see on this kind of event. So beautiful to see the number 500 out there doing its business, and Mark has no doubt got a big, massive grin on his face from the joys of what he's undertaking this afternoon.
Yeah, that SL does look amazing, doesn't it? So we're seeing on the timing screen there that your pole position starter Isidoro is actually out of the race.
Oh.
And I'm not seeing Oscari's there in the third. I thought he'd crashed out. Whew. There we go. That's but Isidoro definitely out, and we have lost a couple of drivers. Carl Constable and Mighty D have dropped off as well. Isidoro, the current, the latest victim of the Sicilian countryside. So we're going to try and grab a replay of that. Our broadcast director, Daniel Costello, is on the case.
This, again, goes to show, doesn't it, how difficult this race is. One small mistake, damage is turned up to 100%. And as you can see from this onboard with Jackson Robillard at the moment, there is so many things you can hit. Ooh, nice bit of drifting there in the Ferrari. 5 litres of brum brum go go, getting laid down on tyres that are about as effective as the soles of my cheap trainers. And sideways action is what comes of it. I love these cars, man. I love them.
And, he's playing Ken Block Simulator. It's the Sicilian Gymkhana.
But that's the thing, isn't it? That's what's beautiful about old cars. Sideways is faster, more often than not. It's not the ultra precision of a modern race car. You need to get the lock stops clicked with the steering wheel. You need to get the car sideways to get it round these corners, and as a visual treat, that's really quite spectacular.
Oh, just getting word that Isidoro has suffered a case of disco fever.
Ugh.
So he's basically he's lost connection to the server, and that's his event done.
And that is a really tragic way. If that's true, that's a really tragic way to retire from something like this, because it's such a feat of skill and bravery to navigate your way around this track once, twice, 3 times, and then for a scenario like that, completely out of your control, is so sad. That's the gaming equivalent of a mechanical failure, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It would be cool if we did have like Grand Prix 4 style mechanical failures, but what happens with that is you get people claiming that the system's biased in their favor. Jake's out.
So
Jake's had off somewhere.
One wall too many, methinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and again, it bites you. This place bites you. It's just like we've said many times before. Not about who's fastest, it's about he who makes the least mistakes. And one small error in judgment, which, trust me, is incredibly easy to do, just game over, and you're out of this one. As we're riding on board now with Scari Kansanen in the 2-litre class Maserati A6 GCS, which I've never actually known the name of, so there we go, learned something new today. And this is going to be difficult now, isn't it? We're in the twisties. Great driving there by the 198, just to get on the brakes, get out the way. That is Robillard
yeah.
just moving out of the way of his rival Kansanen. So again, great respect, great invoking the gentlemanly behaviour of the era, actually, methinks.
This is a replay. This is Jake. Oh, he's going to connect with one of these trees, isn't he? No, okay. Whew. That's he's overshot the corner, and that's and wheel off, and slowly sinking into the ground, and that's him out of. It's his first retirement of the season. Massive consistency from him all through the series, and the track's just bit him in the bottom, and that's him done until the final round at Le Mans.
Yeah, it's a shame for Jake. Obviously, tuning in from the United States, which is why maybe it looked a little bit funky, that contact. It's just the way that the connectivity happens into the broadcast, but that wouldn't have affected him physically on his machine. It was just long distances travelling over that there tinterwebs sometimes makes things look a little bit more spicy, but real shame for Jake there. Simple mistake to make in the Jaguars. Had a couple of contacts up to this point already as well, and sadly a DNF did not finish is the reward for that one, as we're looking at Simbad Paul now. Paul, great name there, Sunshine, in the Aston Martin DB3S from the United Kingdom in British Racing Green, rocking number 275, 19th on the track at the moment, but only just started his voyage into the second lap, 5 minutes and 30 seconds in, which for us would be an incredibly long lap, 5 minutes and 30 seconds, but it's just a small fraction of a lap, 9 kilometres in fact.
He could have done 2 laps of Bathurst in that time. It's
crazy.
It's crazy, yeah. That was the thing of the time, wasn't it? Just longer is better. Giggity.
Yeah, well done. But it's true though, there was a racing back in this era was not the sprint racing we know of it today. No. It was a test of man and machine, wasn't it? Often these cars, many of them would retire either through mechanical failure or driver error, and it was kind of like the pioneers of automotive excellence and bravery. A lot of these drivers, fresh out of the war, flying fighter planes, or in the trenches where every day could be your last, looking for an adrenaline thrill. And the sort of 3-4 kilometre tracks are tame by comparison. They want these out of the open countryside, the danger, and the manufacturers want the endurance aspects. That feeds directly into their road car offering. It's the old win on Sunday, sell on Monday mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the tracks of. So obviously, you had Targa Florio, the Nürburgring, Le Mans, some of the French, or the other French road courses. In terms of, like even the full Monza was stupidly long for what it was because it was so high speed. It's amazing how anybody got through it all. Like very few drivers have lived into old age. Sterling Moss being one of them, Stewart, Andretti, Bob Bondurant lived to quite an old age, Phil Hill made it to old age, Jack Brabham made it to old age. There were so many of the great drivers of that time didn't make it beyond the 70s.
And a lot of the drivers as well, it was a very, very different life experience as well, because your life expectancy was so low. A lot of these drivers weren't the super fit sportsmen that you see nowadays. They were often a little bit older. They liked to drink hard, smoke hard, knowing that they might not be around next week. So they absolutely lived the life to the full. And really, it was Sterling Moss in the sort of this kind of period, 1955 or so, that was considered to be the first of the professional athletes in motorsport. Up until that time, you had people like Juan Manuel Fangio that was, it's fair to say, had plenty of timber on him, let's put it that way, and drank and smoked and stuff. And Moss was the first of the true, like, taking fitness to the next level and professionalism to the next level. These were mavericks and playboys and people that lived life on the absolute edge of what it could be. So very different cars, very different tracks, and a very different mentality to the whole sport than we see nowadays.
Vladimir Kotliarski making his way through. It's great to see that particular flag on the grid with everything going on at the minute, so hopefully everything's great for you over there at the minute. Simbad Paul as well in his... It's nice to have somebody on the grid that is a description of themselves, isn't it? Simbad Paul. He loves his Sims. Ended up having quite a weird accident at Dundra last time out, but managed to get quite far in as he passes the 15-kilometre board.
I'm going to throw another question at you, Aidan, if I may, for the benefit of those watching
Great
at home.
Great scenery at this track. Hopefully nobody slides off the side of a mountain and ends up wrapped around a tree.
So, Aidan, quick question, if I may. How do people get involved in this championship if they want to take part in the next race at Le Mans in a short while's time? I understand, actually. I'm just hearing in my ear from Daniel that Aidan can't hear me at this moment in time, so he's just reconnecting. So while we wait for Aidan to drop a little message into the Discord chat,
am I working again?
Oh, I can hear you, Aidan. Can you hear me?
Am I working? I am working.
Hello.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what. Something got reset. I'm just like, ugh. Don't know what happened. I was talking, and it's like, Paul's not saying anything, so I'll just keep talking.
Well, I'm glad we're all back up and running. And what I was asking you, Aidan, just to put you on the spot for a moment, if anybody's watching this at home and fancies getting involved in racing in this championship, how can they get involved in Le Mans for the final round of the season a little while down the road?
Okay, so what happens is you go to the GP Laps YouTube channel, then you find his Discord, and then just before, like in the week before the event starts, I think it opens on the Monday and it shuts at about 6 p.m. UK time on the Friday. You basically just hot lap until the top, until all 40 slots are filled, and each class is filled basically to within a certain percentage of the fastest time, the second fastest time in that class. There's only a certain amount of people that can be in the 5-litre class to stop everybody picking that certain amount of 3 litres, certain amount of 2 litres. And then when the race rolls around on the Saturday afternoon in the UK, you turn up, you do your qualifying if it's a race, or you just turn up if it's a time trial like this, and just go for it and have many funs. As Simonchich, wow, almost almost bought the farm.
Yeah, on Simonchich's behalf, I would like you to take over commentating for the next 10 minutes while I change my pants and trousers. Because that was, again, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, that was bravery and commitment next level. Now, whether that was on purpose or whether that was, oh no, let's hope this works out well, I have no idea. But goodness me, that's pushing every last possible iota of luck he has got for this race. You can't do that too many times here, Aidan, without going and saying hello to the virtual doctor's office.
And he's, unless he's a cat and he's got 9 lives, I don't know.
Well, for a 40-minute lap at 3 of them, he needs a damn sight more than 9. Because this is, yeah, that's, wow, that was good stuff. That was very good stuff.
I mean, how do you follow that?
Exactly. He's gonna basically. He needs the next 10 minutes just let the heart rate come down as he gets very close to one of those nasty concrete bollards to the left-hand side. So yeah, you kind of, because it's such a long lap, such a long race, you kind of have spurts, don't you? Rather than stints between start and finish lines, you have spurts where you think for the next 5 minutes I'm going to go for it, and then I'm going to calm down for 10. Then I'm going to go for it again. Or bits of the track that you're more confident with than others, you can be more committed on, can't you?
Yeah, as talking of people that were committed, we can bring in Jake, who, for the first time this season, has retired from a race.
Oh, I know. Hope you guys caught it. Or I hope you didn't catch it, but...
We saw it.
I'm out of a race, and the race I think I wanted to do best in. I'm gutted. But it, I guess, shows how hard it is, if anybody had any doubts that it's hard. But I can see my main championship rival, your name, Simonchich here, is doing really well. So it'll be an interesting shake-up for everything, I'm sure.
Well, you've used your... Yerne's used his drop rounds by not being at the previous 2, whereas you can just go, yeah, that's going to be my drop round. So you're kind of okay in that sense, whereas... Yerne, if he bins it in this race and scores no points, then that's going to affect him more than it's going to affect you.
Yeah, let's be honest. That's the only way I would have had a shot at a championship against him anyway. Is having extra races for myself. But yeah, I'm very impressed. I mean, it was clear early in this week that this was not necessarily something he had done a lot of times, but he has certainly figured it out really quickly. To put it in perspective, it took me at least 6 months to get good enough to do laps around this track, and it's been a couple of years now, and I still DNF pushing. So he's been able to do laps like this, I think, with very little prep comparatively, which is so impressive.
At least you've been at the hardest track on the calendar, so you've got that excuse at least.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry, Paul, you were going to say something.
No, sorry, Aiden. Hi, Jake. How you doing? Quick question for you, for our audience at home, because Aiden and I have tried to put people behind the wheel, but we don't have any skills or experience to really do that justice. Give us a little bit of a flavour of what it's like to drive these cars on this track in competition, please.
It is, I mean, challenging. Absolutely, it's very tough because these cars, they're so rigid and have so little grip for, with the tires that you're taking something where with a faster car and something I've driven here before, 60s sports cars or even 70s sports cars. They just have so much more mechanical grip that you can get yourself out of trouble a lot easier. But with these cars, you really need to know where you're going. So for tracks like the Isle of Man here at the Targa Florio, that's the main challenge. So it's much more like a rally than it is a road race. You're definitely, you have to prepare each corner as a late apex, and it's basically a rally without the co-driver.
And all the more glorious for it. And I just want to talk to you as well, if I can, just about what inspired you to come up with a championship like this, something that's so incredibly different than anything that happens in, well, even real life now, but certainly in a virtual world.
Yeah, I've always been interested in doing classic sports car type events, and years ago, a decade ago, I did, iRacing hosted races and big events. We had one called the Targa Virginia, which was basically trying to emulate this race, but on the Virginia International Raceway long course, and the best we could do at the time. So I've always been kind of interested in this thing, and it really was this mod in R Factor 2, discovering it, driving it, and if you can try these cars, I know you both tried them a little bit, they're incredible feeling to drive. If you like this type of, they're still old, they still feel like 1950s cars, but they're the best representations of these types of cars that are out there. So it really is what pushed it over the edge to say, yeah, we need to do this race, or this whole championship. And then looking at all these tracks, the series of tracks that we're racing on, I don't think any other sim has all of these tracks in this quality to race with these kind of cars. So it just made sense to put together.
Beautiful stuff, man, and I can certainly say, Aidan, we are thoroughly enjoying ourselves, sir, and what's been quite an eventful race up to this point.
Yeah, it's been because like I know you were saying earlier, Paul, it was you're thinking, have we really got this far through already? Because you expected with such long tracks, it's like, oh god, this is boring, this is going to take forever, but it's not. It's flying by. There's always something going on. There always seems to be a driver within about half a mile of another driver, so everything seems to be working out quite well, and the talent on show has been a lot better than anybody would have ever anticipated, because with these cars everybody's in a wall every 6 seconds because they can't drive the cars, but everything here seems to have worked out just fine from a broadcast point of view. So it's been a great show, as well as something different to have in a sea of GT3 content.
Now I know I can see that Ascari here is actually catching Hrrc Simoncic, and do we know if either of them have pitted so far, or are they doing 2 laps?
They're both
back
pitted.
to back? Both pitted. So Ascari's closed in. I imagine we don't really know who's overall winning, but if Ascari's caught up to Hrrc, either Hrrc's made a few mistakes and has slowed a lot down, or Ascari is very quick. And as we saw at Dundrod, I think Ascari is a very quick driver.
Put on a clinic at Dundrod. I think that's the best way to to put it, as we've been told that we've lost Salani, and we've also lost Frank Verplanken as well. So the island is claiming a few more victims as it goes along. But really, it's between Simoncic and Kantonen up there. They're probably going to be the two that are in a shot of taking the win. They're taking the win here.
There's a little bit of fatigue as well plays into these drivers. So 40 minutes per lap, 3 laps. It's a massive concentration ask for these drivers. As we mentioned before, even in a straight line, the car is trying its very best to spit you off on the racetrack. And Jake, how difficult is it for our drivers here today to keep themselves in the zone all the way through what will probably end up being at least a couple of hours worth of track action, plus the delays that they had to overcome at the start of the race, and keeping the car out of the wall and driving competitively as well? That's a really unique skill set the drivers need, isn't it, to be competitive?
Yeah, I think the mental fatigue is a very real thing, and certainly getting everybody back. And I have to think the start and the issues we had just getting things off the grid definitely played into just not being super focused like you need to be. But this track is a knowledge test, and so you're always trying to think of what's next, where some circuits you can kind of go on autopilot for parts of them. It's really not an option around here, or else you do something like I did earlier in the race. So you always have to be thinking, and then of course sim racing is as physical as you want it to be, but I would say the amount of precise movements and just constantly turning 567 corners here, it could be physically demanding as well. So 3 laps is nothing to shake a stick at. And in the real Targa Florio, that was about the length of a stint for drivers, would be 2 or 3 laps, and then they would do driver swaps. So we're effectively doing a real stint of this race. The real race, of course, being 11 laps of the circuit.
Do you find it a little difficult sometimes, or do you find it easy to get lost on this track and just think, oh, I can't quite exactly remember what sector I'm in and what's coming next, or is it kind of embedded in your mind now?
Yeah, I always get lost on it. I mean, you never really learn it, I would say. I'm sure at some point you do enough laps, maybe you learn it pretty good, but you don't learn it to the level that you learn other circuits. And I'd say I think the drivers that spend a lot of time here don't get lost per se, but you may have doubts about corners, because obviously many of the corners look similar, and they start to look less similar over time, but many look similar, and you start having doubts and saying, is that actually that corner I'm thinking it is, or is it the next one? Or you anticipate a turn is coming up and you can't remember if it's after the next left-hander flick or the one after that. So you start doing things like that. But yeah, it's a circuit. There's a lot of different, we've been sharing this week, as a lot of the drivers that you're seeing today, this is their first real experience with this track. And we're teaching or showing, giving guidance on ways to learn the track and learn it effectively. And a lot of it's, we have a car spun out, Nikolai.
Yep, he's out.
Looks like Nikolai, the Russian driver, spun out. Looks like Real Deal God got started as well. I know he had some connection issues on the original start, so happy to see him in there. But just to wrap up that thought, some of the tricks to learning something like this are actually knowing where you are on the circuit and giving some context. If you watch any of my streams or some of the other folks doing it, talk about the corners or the cities that you're going through. The first city's Cerda, and then you work up the hill past Sclafani, through Colossano, down to Campo Felice. The reason not necessarily is to give people a tour of the circuit, but it's to remind yourself of kind of the general order and what comes next as far as sections, so that you don't forget what you've passed already.
Hayden.
Looks like for Josh is moving up as well.
That's so different for us, isn't it, Hayden? Oh, remember this city that you drove through and this town that you went through? It's such a different experience than what most drivers are used to, isn't it? It's an incredible event, and it's sensational to have something so very different. Oh, there's a bit of contact there as well. Loses the rear into the bank and gets away with it, but you can't do that too many times before you start finding negative effects on the car as well. A little wiggle of the wheel just to make sure things are pointing in the right direction. But that was as close as you really want to get to a retirement here, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, just going back to that point about Jake was saying with the this town is this and that. It's a bit like it's almost like waypoints
Yeah.
when you drive to. Yeah, when I used to drive between Lincolnshire and Birmingham to see my grandparents, it's like, right, so I'm in Pole Beach, then I go to Spalding, then I go to Stamford, then I go to Kettering, then I go to the end of the A14, then to Junction 7, the M6. But it's like with somewhere like the old Spa, it's like this corner's Malmedy, this corner's Stavlo. Like they were the villages, or the corners were named after the landmarks that were at that corner, like Lodge Corner at Alton Park. There was a lodge there, so it's kind of like it's almost like a visual reference as Simichich wipes out a road sign. Thankfully, that's one of the bits of destructible scenery on the track. But yeah, you sort of like to say, okay, right, I'm here now. Then I know that the next part. It's almost like you're talking to yourself, as opposed to telling the 80, 90, 100 people that are watching what you're doing, as it were.
And Hrrc is absolutely pushing this thing to the limit. This section especially, so he's coming down right now from Colossal, which is the second major town you pass through that has that famous hairpin in it. And he's coming down the mountain towards Campo Felice. This entire section is downhill, makes it a lot harder to get the car to turn in, especially these cars, they understeer on downhill sections. And you can see him just using every inch of the road. It's a hard section too, because it is also over 50 kilometers into the lap. So, if you're practicing, you may not get here very often. And so if you get here, it's kind of a new experience each time. But he's on the ragged edge. He's on a pretty good lap as well, 30.5 minutes into this one. I bet he's actually at play for that low 40-minute mark.
So, when you're driving in this event, do you have any oversight into where you are in the grand scheme of things regarding time and your rivals? Or is it just a case of get the deal done and then find out when everybody crosses the line for the checkered flag?
Yeah, you really don't, but it kind of plays into the whole vintage history type aspect of this, because drivers really didn't know. Teams did not know exactly where they were. They had rough ideas, but it wasn't until after the entire event had concluded that you really knew who the winner was of it, especially with the staggered starts and everything like that. So you kind of know, if somebody during my first lap, Jackson did come up behind me because I made a couple mistakes. So I know I at least lost 15 seconds overall. If he passes me, that means he made up 15 seconds on me, since that was the interval. If I caught another car, I know I'd maybe gained 15 seconds at least on that driver, but you have no idea where you are. So all of these drivers were really just looking at our lap times, and then you have to hope that you're not catching cars at weird spots, or obviously if you make mistakes, you got to try to make those up somewhere.
Absolutely sensational. So no doubt, Jake, you'd have come into this race and done a bit of mental arithmetic and set yourself a target lap time where achieve that kind of time is where I want to be on pace. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. So if you look back at our pre-qualifying results, 40 minutes I think is your mark for the really fast cars. We had a few, the 2-liter drivers. I know Isidoro's out of the race with a connection issue, which is terrible. It looks like maybe Darren's had some issues as well, who was the other fast 2-liter driver up front. He's back in 5th in the running order right now, but he started in 2nd, so he's lost quite a bit of time. Those drivers were able to get into the 39-minute laps. Hrrc here was able to do a really high 39:57 or so. So if you get low 40s, I think that's what you have to be aiming for. Factor in pit stops, that's going to add to your time, and that is counted in the final result times. But yeah, these 40.5-minute laps are really, really good. You can see from Santiago here as well.
Santiago behind. Is that Cowan? No. Yes. No. Yeah. It's behind Cowan. So obviously not for position, because it's a time trial and not an actual race, which is, we have to keep reminding ourselves of that fact rather than reminding everybody watching at home that that's the fact, because we're so used to commentating on actual racing. Could you just sort of clarify the rules when it comes to overtaking? Is it just common sense, or is there actually a pass on the left, pass on the right type of thing?
Yeah, we have advised the drivers to let each other by. If you catch somebody, that means they at least made up 15 seconds on you, however they did that. Whether you made a mistake or they're just much quicker, but chances are they're quicker than you. if they caught up to you. So at the next available place, let them by. We've advised the best ways is to coordinate to be on the left, although nobody's going to get disqualified if you pass somebody on the right. But just to try to communicate a common way. And we'll actually see here Santiago trying to find his way around, but it looks like Nate might be floating in the middle of the track a little bit there. But you're racing the clock, so it's definitely not an environment where you would race head to head and block people or anything.
We've talked about pit stops a little bit over the course of this race, and on average, most drivers, they're going to make their stop as Santiago goes down the inside now and gets track position. Most drivers are going to make their stop at the end of each lap. As far as we're aware, the third place Ferrari of Jackson is currently the only driver at the sharp end of the field that elected not to make a pit stop last time around. How marginal is fuel economy for these cars if you're trying to do a 2-lap without stopping? And if it is marginal, as a driver, what can you do to help your fuel economy?
That's one of the great things about this being a mixed class championship, is that all of the cars have very different qualities in fuel burn. Obviously the displacement, the different classes, the 2-liter cars burn fuel a lot more efficiently than the 5-liter cars. But it is possible for every car, I believe, on the grid to do 2 laps on a tank. But the driving itself is, the handling of the cars changes dramatically based off of the fuel amount. So the Jag that I was driving, for instance, really is tough to drive with low fuel. And that tends to be a quality. Most of the cars are tougher to drive on low fuel. I think the exception are some of the 2-liter cars with that. So it may be that you can actually make it 2 laps. It's not like your tires are going to wear out, but the car is really hard to handle. And that's almost more important than being able to go the distance. The pit stops, if you're fueling efficiently, they shouldn't be much longer than 20-30 seconds. And so if that gives you the peace of mind, the better handling car that you can actually make the finish, it's probably a better idea to do 2 pit stops.
That was close.
And I'm just looking here at the running order. So Simicic is first on track right now. He started 3rd overall. Isidoro, DNF, Darren has had some issues and is down the running order. But Ascari is not far behind Yerne. And Ascari started between Yerne and myself. And so he pulled in about 10 seconds. So we might be looking at Kantonen actually leading the way right now.
I really like.
And he's in a bit of a train at the minute, so that's going to lose him a bit of time if people don't move out the way or whatever.
And this is scary, isn't it? When you're at this point of the race, as Jake mentioned, there's the different classes, there's different speeds, people get their lap time through different parts of the track, there's different understanding of where you can and can't go fast. It's so easy, if you're in a little gaggle like we see here, to brake a bit later than the rival in front of you, or even worse, brake earlier and get rear-ended from the car behind. So it's a really nervous time for a driver when racing in close proximity to other cars. But that could also help Aidan as well, can't it? If you've got a visual marker in front of you, you can kind of use that to carry you along, provided they're tramming along at a pace that's good enough to uplift your overall performance as well.
Yeah, and the way these cars drive, obviously you don't have a lot of cornering grip. So unlike GT3s or modern cars, anything, I'll say modern, anything 80s and newer, the cornering speeds are really low and you don't have the grip to go side by side. So you have to pass into braking zones, or more likely just on a straightaway by letting somebody by. So you're not going to be able to outbrake each other either, generally. But this will be quite interesting. Actually, it looks like we didn't see it on screen, but Santiago just let Simet Paul by. They're racing both in the Aston Martin, so they would have been in a slipstream tango as well on the straightaway coming up.
Which of course will help fuel consumption as well as giving you a visual reference. And I mentioned this before you came on, Jake. It's obviously it's my first time participating in the commentary team for this championship, and one thing, apart from the obvious class of driving quality that we've seen on track, one thing that's really impressed me is the gentlemanly conduct of a lot of these drivers. They are making, if you're coming up to be overtaken, they're making life nice, as easy as possible for the chasing car behind. And I really like to see that one. I think it's a testament to the series itself, isn't it, that we've got such professional and gentlemanly drivers that are racing at such an incredibly high level here.
We do, and we're about to see Hrrc do a low 39-minute lap. He's coming through the final 2 corners now. This is going to be way quicker than any of the qualifying times. Track, grip, maybe a bit different now, but he's also in the zone. But incredible lap. I would expect him to pit here, or not. He's not pitting, so he pit on the first lap, and he didn't come in the second lap. So he's basically mirroring Jackson's strategy the other way, and so I think Hrrc might be. If he can get loose of Canton in here, if he can get about 15 seconds out of Canton in, we could be pretty sure that Hrrc might be on his way to win, at least out of the top 3 or 4 drivers. Your comments though your comments on the driving of the series though, here's Jackson in the pits. The drivers we've I think found or have found us really. It's been an open summer, so anybody can sign up, but. Obviously folks that enjoy vintage racing, maybe skew a little bit older generally, although we do have some younger folks, which is great. And but overall, we're here to enjoy the cars, where these tracks are hard, the cars are hard. You put in a lot of time to practice and make a race like this. And so I think that shows. It definitely gets a little more head-to-head and fighty at some of the, Le Mans will see that for sure. But around a track like this, everybody that's here knows that everybody else is doing their very best, and we'll certainly give them a little bit of space for it.
Aidan, are you still eating your hobnobs?
Just looking at it.
I've just finished the first one as Dion Hansen comes in as Robillard leaves. So Simincic mirroring Robillard. That's quite an interesting thing to see. But I can imagine it was squeaky bump time come the end of that second lap on that tank though, because we were trying to figure it out. Would they actually be able to make more than 1 lap before having to put fuel in?
He's quite brave as well from Simincic, isn't he? He knows he's got good pace at this stage. As Jake's already mentioned, as the car gets lighter, it becomes more difficult to drive. And Simincic, if he continued as he was, made his pit stop and carried on, it'd still be a good position for a strong result, even potentially a win. So this is bravery. This shows the confidence of drivers at this level, doesn't it? That with all the other issues that they've got to overcome, he's still willing to roll the dice of the light tank, difficult car to give himself even more advantage over the pack.
Yeah, well, really, so right now he's on his 3rd lap, his final lap of the race, and the car is going to be in optimal configuration, if you will. It's got probably a half tank of fuel, maybe slightly less, and it's going to feel good. But at the time he gets to Colossano and starts that downhill run, that's when it's really going to start hurting, and it'll be fun to watch him towards the very end, see if he can actually, hold on to it.
Definitely won't be fun from the driver's seat for Hrrc Simincic now, because the pressure is starting to build. And I just love to see how violent these cars are, even from the off-board shots. And we all know from watching motorsport, from watching esports and sim racing, it looks much more dramatic behind the wheel than it does from the TV cameras. But you can see how much movement is going through these cars, how hard the drivers are having to work as it goes over the crest, and the cars are starting to unsettle. The track is so bumpy as well, of course, being public roads. And the level of concentration and ability and mechanical sympathy and empathy, in fact, with the car that's underneath you, these drivers need to go quickly, is just something that's a pleasure to behold. We don't even need to see a competitive aspect of racing. Just watching these cars going around the racetrack is visually spectacular. And Jake and Aidan, to either of you that wants to pick this one up, that's pretty much why we love historic cars, isn't it? Because it's just so physical and so visual.
Yeah, it's really fun. I know a lot of the folks involved in it, and I'll let you jump in after too, but the having your just basic type setup for steering wheels with no buttons and the H shifter, and it's very mechanical. There's not a lot to fiddle around with while you're driving. Just all you're doing is driving, so you're not changing modes and things on the engines. I think that's a draw for a lot of folks. And the driving looks spectacular. It is fastest to slide these cars around, which is not always true with a lot of cars. So, as you see folks sliding the cars through the corners, that's really the quick way. Getting oversteer, coming onto the straightaways, it's actually really controllable once you learn how to handle it. And it's so much fun to drive. These cars in this mod overall that Wuchu has put together for our Factor 2 here is just some of the best vintage cars in sim racing.
It's back to basics driving, really, isn't it? You've got your. It's almost like going from a Formula One car back down to an old Formula 4. No, sorry, not old Formula 4, Formula Ford with the 4-speed H pattern. It's like, okay, I've got no aero, very little mechanical. It's me and an engine essentially and 4 wheels, so having to be careful on the pattern. It's kind of, I don't know, going back to some of these older cars, you then go back into a modern one and find that you can get a little bit better in a modern car from driving these older ones because of the way that they need to be driven, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that's, I suppose, like modern for you, Jake, is 1993, isn't it?
Yeah, once we get the H patterns, tends to be the more modern side of where I'm sim racing. But yeah, we see you're in a sim. It's a lot of the modern type cars and enjoys thoroughly driving these because they are so different. So you don't have to be obsessed with vintage racing or that be your only thing to try these out and appreciate them and have fun. But if you don't race this type of thing very often, I definitely expect an adjustment period as you figure it out for the first time.
Now, both of you have mentioned H-pattern shifters a little bit during the last few minutes of conversation, and that kind of takes me back to a bit of the commentary I was talking to Aidan about, and I want to speak to you as well about this, Jake, if I can, to get your take on this one. One would assume, because of the level of commitment required to take part competitively in something like this, you're rocking a H-pattern shifter. I assume that you go through the whole heel and toe routine and everything, and explain to anybody that maybe is more used to the flappy paddles just why that is so damn awesome.
It's a lot of fun. It's very satisfying once you get it figured out. I think this was actually the first race this season that I was left foot braking quite a lot because the Jag, it's almost always in first gear around here. There's not a lot of shifting happening, just a couple of straightaways and then of course the last straightaway. But yeah, it's a fun style of driving. It takes a lot of practice. We're not enforcing that. Whoa, this car is doing a lot of sliding there. We're not enforcing that folks, do H pattern. We didn't want to block the league from folks that might just have paddles, but we don't have auto shifting. The only aid that is enabled is clutch help. So if you don't have 3 pedals, you can still participate. But otherwise, no aids at all. And a good number of the folks involved are using H patterns. So it's really an impressive thing to watch. Very satisfying to do though, but certainly takes a lot of practice.
I bought a stupidly expensive H-pattern shifter because I adore that kind of thing, and then quickly realised very few cars in sim racing are actually H-pattern, and even less of them race online, which is why I was so intrigued about taking part in this. It's such a physically manual experience to drive this kind of car on this kind of track, isn't it?
It really is. I'm looking through our results currently too, and I think we've been sleeping a little bit on Dion Hansen, up to 5th overall. Tough to say exactly where he might be time-wise, but he did start 9th in the starting order. Has passed Rupe, who's behind him now, and not super far off Darren, who's had some of his own issues. So he might be an interesting one to watch as we get a little bit further. I know we're watching on screen right now Martin Baer as well, and he's got the 354 behind him. Just Booch Magoo, one of my favorite names.
Oh, Birchfield's out.
Austin Birchfield. So he started back in 36th in that Mercedes-Benz, which is an absolute tank. If you want a tricky car to drive, that 3-liter category. I know, Aidan, you've mentioned this a bunch this season, that the results will be kind of jumbled. You wouldn't expect just on paper to see the 5-liter cars behind the 2 liters or 3 liters mixed in. I think one of the surprises has been that the 3 liters are so slow. I think they just don't have, especially around a track like this, they don't have the upper end speed that the 5 liters have, but they're still very heavy, so they don't have the weight advantage that the 2 liters have. They're just kind of stuck in the middle.
Yeah, expect normal service to be resumed at Le Mans with the 5 liters, then the 3s, then the 2s, because it's going to be no chicane, more Sam. I think the run from the run from Arnage to the start finish line is going to be pretty much flat out as well. So it's just going to be top speed and power is going to rule there, isn't it?
It is. I know the Mercedes drivers in the 3-liter class specifically are very much looking forward to that. Richard Woodcock, Mark Seidler, and them. I know the Mercedes is pretty good on top speed. The Jag, to my advantage, does have the highest top speed, but it'll take more than top speed to do well there.
And it's worth bearing mention as well that, of course, the drivers have to stick with the car for the duration of the season. Is that correct? So you can't pick the best car for the individual track. It's has to wait itself out over the course of the year.
Yeah, we did do that very specifically, and we've been very adamant about not letting folks switch cars, which is, is always tricky. You want folks to participate, and we're looking at Isidoro and Darren here in the Bristols. Both of them failed to qualify, I believe, at Spa. They just couldn't get that car to go fast enough. And that's always, as somebody organizing a race, you don't want folks to not be able to qualify because of their car. But then we saw here, they're the fastest cars that are out there. So it helps balance things out. It helps create an interesting championship. We don't have to care about BOP or anything like that. And so it is really fun to have all these different cars that have different strengths. And if you look back, I mean, that's really what racing was all about in these days too, is the different cars and what each team was trying to do. So to bring just a little bit of that to sim racing, I think is also refreshing.
Now, while we were talking, we saw for quite a while, unfortunately he's off screen now, Dion Hansen, that you mentioned, Jake, as being someone that's flown under the radar a little bit for a good result. Hansen was wringing the neck of that car for the few minutes that we saw him on screen, in direct comparison to Ascari that we're looking at now, that's much smoother at this stage of the race behind the wheel. So I think Dion Hansen has sniffed himself an opportunity of a very good result indeed as Ascari gets the sideways action going on the power out through the hairpin. So now, Aidan, you mentioned the whole railroad and how the track's going to progress and change, and the cars and the balance is going to change as well. This is kind of like the golden time in this race, isn't it, to really lay a claim for a strong result on the checkered flag?
Without overdoing it, obviously. Yeah, it's it's probably because of the length of the track, the railroad's not going to build up in the same way that it would 30 cars at Knockhill would. There's only going to be a ever so slight amount of grip on the track. It might be worth maybe a tenth or two, but you never know what that's going to do with what happens at the end. And just looking in the production chat Discord channel where it's saying, it's going to be close between so and so and so and so, because I think it was something like Jackson was 10 seconds faster on the first lap, but Simincic was 13 seconds faster on the second lap. So that's like a 3-second gain for Yerne, but we're not going to know until the end, because we've got people like Liam and that go just trying to calculate the times manually like they would have done back in 1954. So they've probably got the hardest job out of anybody, more so than the drivers have. So yeah, they're going to be very busy over the next sort of hour or so, I would have thought.
Yeah, back in for the real Targa Florio, I guess up until recently, and they may still do it for redundancy at the Isle of Man for the TT races, but it's literally a booth of folks with stopwatches and timing. They each have drivers assigned to them, and they are cars assigned to them for this event, and they would track that car and time its time it crosses the line and be able to report that way. So in real life, you would get a sense of who's winning. To go back on what I was saying earlier, just a little bit, based off of each lap time, but you still wouldn't have that full picture to the end. And unfortunately, because of how we had to change the start around, big applause to Just Race that does the servers for this, for quickly getting another server stood up for us. Ian and Liam in the stewarding box for thinking on the fly and coming up with a new starting procedure for this. We were very close to canceling today just because of all the issues we were having at first, but we got it running. And because of the change in the start, we may not be able to know really the final results till quite a bit after. We're going to have to do some replay analysis here, but we'll be able to calculate who did what lap times and see exactly where the results ended up. But yeah, I agree that it looks like Yerne and Jackson might be really close. Ascari, just because he's not super far off of Yerne and did start behind him, might be close. And then Dion looks like another clear front runner in the 3-liter Aston Martin, actually.
Yeah, we've also lost Dan Court and Sinmad Paul in quick succession, so I don't know if they had it coming together or they stacked it into the same wall, because I've had it myself. You see a guy go wide at the next corner, and then you do exactly the same thing. So see if broadcast director Daniel Costello can get a replay of those. But looking at Jackson, he's 13 and a half minutes into his lap at the minute, his final lap at the minute, and we have 13 drivers remaining of those who started. So
Well, I think it might be a bit higher than that. It's actually quite a lot higher. There's a couple that are DNF that are sliding down the order right now. I think we've got about 27, 26 cars still running, which we had 16 finish at the Isle of Man, which was our lowest of the season. So be interesting to see. It looks like we may come out on top of that.
Oh yeah, I can see.
In many ways, this track is actually a lot easier than the Isle of Man is, even though that track's a little bit shorter. Certainly a lot shorter lap times. It's such higher speed there that you have to really know where you're going to go anywhere. Whereas in this track, there's a lot of slow speed corners. You can kind of get into a rhythm there. And we're on board now with Hrrc Simičić, and Ascari is within sight of him from behind.
This is where we're going to see the grunt of this Ferrari is going to happen here, but then
he's coming up
corner.
to Calciatore here, which is maybe not the highest point on the track, but close to it. He's going to flip down the side road, coming up here to head towards Scilato, which is just to halfway around the lap. He's probably 2-3 minutes before halfway.
It's just crazy, some of the stuff that Hrrc is able to do in these cars. We saw on lap 1, he basically did a full-on Matrix wall ride up the side of one of these sort of cliff faces, if you want to call them that, and he's sort of cutting corners a tiny bit just to sort of straighten out the corner a tiny bit and things like that. And he's doing it here as well. Dips onto the grass, and then again, I wouldn't have the confidence in any car to do that. So so knowing that he's driving super quick around this super difficult track, it's definitely a marker of the sort of the talent that has been attracted to this league.
And let's not forget as well that Hrrc is running a light fuel load as well, having not made his pit stop. Now this is a bit of drama that we saw earlier on. Aidan, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier with... Oof! Ow! Okay, that was unavoidable.
That's unlucky.
It was Santiago and Sinmad Paul coming together.
Yeah.
I saw they're chatting about an incident there, but yeah, it's just unfortunate that happens, but it doesn't look malicious in any way.
Yeah, he's just clattered the raised part of that concrete wall on the bridge and bounced back into the middle of the track. So it's just wrong place at the wrong time. So can't really be mad at anybody for that. It happens, and if you are mad about it, you've overthought it a tiny bit. But in the moment, you probably are going to think of that.
This goes back to what we were talking about earlier when we saw the little battle pack of 3 cars, isn't it? That it's so easy to get wrapped up in somebody else's problem that's not of your own making, which is why it's always a nerve-wracking experience to be sharing a similar piece of tarmac on a track like this. And by virtue of the fact that we've got very different classes where lap times are achieved in very different ways, you can often find yourself behind a 5 litre, for example, and you're much faster over the lap, but they keep ground because of fast on straights. And it's so easy to get caught up in things that are completely outside of your sphere of influence, and that's a perfect example of exactly what we were talking about.
Playing to that point, Paul, Kantonen's closed in quite a lot on Simičić, but they've just gone through one of the tightest parts of the circuit. They're still going to be in it for a little while, but unless Kantonen catches up to Hrrc, once I get to that straightaway at the end of the lap, Hrrc is obviously going to have a huge advantage, at least 15 to 20 kilometers per hour down the straightaway. So that'll give him quite the gap, probably pick up 5-6 seconds there, and that might end up saving his race.
It ain't over until it's over. in the events like this one, and every single one of these drivers knows that one so well indeed. You've got to push as Dion Hansen gets the rear out once again in that Aston Martin, but gathers it all up nice and quickly. Not much loss there, and Hansen, the Dutchman, still very firmly, guys, in contention for a strong result, and he knows that he's in contention for something good at the end of today, and he's leaving absolutely nothing on the table. And let's not forget, by this point, drivers have been pushing to their absolute limit for over an hour and a half, and that goes back, Jake, doesn't it, to what we were saying about the mental fatigue as well. You've got to be a special breed to keep your car on its tippy toes for 2 hours on a track like this.
You certainly do, and Dion's putting in an excellent performance today. He hasn't featured too much yet this season, at least in the top results. I know he's been around for a few rounds at least, but it's going to be interesting to see. I hope we're not overplaying how close he is, but just from his position on track and his lap times so far, he's definitely not far off the leaders. See, he's coming down from Caltavituro as well, and this is a long downhill section headed towards Scalato, which is, again, a halfway point on the track for all these drivers.
It's just interesting.
I would expect Yerne and then... Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm just looking at the discussion that's flashing in my peripheral. It's like, who's on the podium? I think I've got this. Who have you got? I've got this. It's like, oh, okay. It's going to be like election night. We're going to be waiting until probably the early morning to find out who's won here.
Like an average Formula 1 race, where you find out 2 days after the race is finished who won.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be a bit...
It's got to go to VAR.
Just to make sure we double check and make sure that the start times and everything line up, and we don't want to announce results that aren't the actual results, but we'll try to get something together, as quickly as we can. But meanwhile, just enjoy the cars sliding around the track here.
I think, to be honest though, Jake, that's kind of like the main draw of this championship. It's almost immaterial who finishes where. It's just the sheer celebration and joy of amazing cars, exceptional talents, and sensational racetracks, and just watching it all unfold, isn't it? Or it is for me anyway. Maybe I'm completely off the mark.
No, it really is. I mean, I always think of myself as, decently competitive, but I'm far from the most competitive person out there. A lot of it for me is what I'm driving and where I'm driving it. And this is exactly what this is meant to be. It's all of the best classic road tracks that existed and strung together with cars like this. Even finishing this race would have been nice today, even if it wasn't on the top step. But yeah, it's I know for every driver here, and I'm so happy we have so many still in the race, but every driver that finishes this is going to feel very accomplished.
Oh, that was scary.
It does look like we got Scooby behind Real Deal. Yeah, Scooby, one of the few drivers actually using a controller rather than a wheel. Able to control that Ferrari around here with that.
Now that is impressive, because driving on a controller in R-Factor 2 is not the easiest thing to do. It's not really geared up for that one, although it is supported. And doing that in this car on this track is absolutely sensational, actually. So,
I think it was the bet.
Yeah, exactly. It's not big enough, because he's nailing it. So great driving there. But Real Deal God, we just saw them when we all took a sharp intake of breath, taking the position. Scooby getting out of the way, applying the brakes, and Real Deal God in the 5-litre Jaguar just about avoiding an airplane-size accident, collecting the rear of the orange machine ahead. So luckily both get through, and we're now into the twisty section of this course. Beautiful roads as always at the Targa Florio. So yeah, great track, great scenes, and yeah, Real Deal God would have been a little bit, I don't know, maybe reassessing his life goals after that one, because that goes flashing before your eyes, doesn't it? Come on, Aidan, stop chatting on YouTube. Where are you?
I thought you were talking to Jake, so I'm.
I was throwing
the question or the statement to anybody who wishes to pick up on it.
I'm just lost in admiring the here on my other screen watching.
I thought Jake was going to answer, so he was the one that was driving around here.
You're mesmerised by that pink and green livery, aren't you, for the Brazilian track?
I don't even like watermelon, but
Oh, it does
yeah.
look like. Now you said that one, yeah, that does remind me of that. As we're looking at our race leader in the Ferrari once again, and this has been a damn fine show from this young man, hasn't it?
Yeah, it always is when he's on a track, isn't it?
How sickening!
Yeah,
Oh look, there's the wall ride again.
yeah.
Oh!
But he's going through. This is a section just up the road from Colossal, so he's getting pretty deep into the lap here. It's through a little hamlet, little village, Borgo Eras is what it's called, and the road here is a bit more narrow than it is even on other parts of the circuit. He just got through that actually, so it's going to widen back out. But he decided to make the road full width there. It looks like.
Just over halfway through this lap as well.
Yeah, he's over halfway. He's going to head down the hill here now, and come up to Colossano, the final or second to last town that'll go through, and then it'll be that run downhill. So, like we were talking about earlier, he's getting to that point where the car is going to be a lot harder to drive because of the fuel level. And I'm not sure. I didn't see his onboard earlier, but it does look like he's shaking it around quite a bit.
Why is that?
Esports.
Is that micro corrections, or what is that? Well, I've heard somebody mention it in the comment in YouTube as well, Jake. What is all this steering activity about?
Yeah, I might be learning something here a little bit about how to drive these cars at his level, but a lot of these cars, especially the heavier ones, 3-liter cars, 5-liter cars, is about setting up your weight transfer. My incident that I had, I didn't get the car turned in correctly, so there's really no, you can't just crank more wheel into the car. Even if you're slowing down, they'll tend to plow. So you'll see coming into the corner, you're really starting a controlled slide, and I think he's managing the weight transfer just with smaller inputs. He might have a tighter steering lock on it too. I'm not sure.
Whatever it is spectacular to see on the screen. It's beautiful shots by our broadcast director as well, the TV cameras, and then the onboard as well, so you can really see the work that has been done at the steering wheel. And again, everybody at home, just to reiterate, I know I've said it a lot, but I'm going to say it again. About 2 hours worth of driving in these conditions with heavy, difficult to drive cars with absolutely no room to breathe or relax. Just marvel for a minute at the level of finesse of driving and the accuracy and the ability to really monster these cars that Simoncic is doing at this moment in time, but in fact everybody in this field is doing. It truly is. I could sit and watch this all day long. It's fantastic stuff, isn't it, Aidan?
Absolutely. It's annoying that someone's that good. You finally think, I'm getting the hang of this whole sim racing malarkey, and then someone like Jurnej Simoncic turns up and reminds you, it's like, no, you're nothing. You are nothing. But he's got he's got a 7.2 second lead to Ascari Kantonen on the road, but it means nothing because we've got Liam and Ian backstage calculating everything as they would have done in 1954 on a spreadsheet. So we are going to be.
Don't think they would have viewed the spreadsheet in 1954.
It was just a physical spreadsheet back then. But yeah, they've got an idea of what the top three is going to be, barring any incidents. But we're only going to have a provisional podium for now, and then it'll all be calculated and announced in due course, I would have thought.
And we've seen more than a few times already this race, and certainly this season, it might feel like it's relatively confident, you know what the podium's going to be like, but until the final car crosses the line, you just can never tell, because I can't say this enough. One small mistake, one snatch of a brake, one not setting your weight transfer up like Jake mentioned earlier, in time for the corner, you can be in the barriers and out of contention. And these kind of cars on these kind of tracks, it's not a case of dealing with the corner when you're in it. You're setting the corner up a good 10-15 feet before you even get to it, so the room for mistake and the percentage chance of a mistake is just so incredibly high. So Simoncic, great stuff at this moment in time, but one small strike of a curb that he didn't expect, not quite setting a crest of a hill up like he anticipated, and that could all go very quickly wrong way round indeed. 26 cars left according to what I'm seeing on the Discord chat, so good stuff, but plenty of racing still to do before we say goodnight.
Jurnej here through the Colossano hairpin. That's one of the most famous corners. If you search online for the Targa Florio, you'll see lots of pictures of cars going through there, almost religious looking, with the spectators all waving and everything. But he's headed now on that downhill. Got about 10 minutes left in his lap. He's on a really good lap right now to be just about 29 minutes and through Colossal here.
Like he's driving the Formula Pro again. It looks really planty through here.
Yeah, surprisingly, the curbs, like you see here on the sides of the road, they are elevated. You can obviously see his car bouncing up and down, but they don't hurt the car at all. You can run straight over them. And so in the couple of places that those do exist, through Cerda, through Colossano there, you really take advantage of that. And I think we discovered that racing around Isle of Man, which also had some curbs like that you could really clobber them as, oh, you run so wide there, almost into the barrier, but just got it turned in time.
These are absolutely sensational scenes, and I've done commentating a lot in a whole variety of different championships, and I know when it's a good event, when I'm watching it thinking, I really wish I wasn't talking about it, and the second this finishes, I'm getting on my rig and having a go myself. This is just, I've said it already, Jake, while you've been here, and I said it before you came on. Big shout out to you and everybody involved for devising and then producing a championship like this, because this is just exactly what motor racing should be, and such a hugely refreshing change from what we're used to seeing in our favourite sport. So big props to you, sir, for this one, because I am having such an amazing time, and I think the guys out there are as well. It's absolutely spectacular.
That was on the edge.
Yeah, it's Dion here is negotiating Colossano now as well. He'll come up to that hairpin too. But absolutely, and maybe it hasn't been mentioned yet here, but certainly all of what you're seeing here, the Targa Florio circuit, the car mod, every track we've raced this season, all available for free once you get R Factor 2 on the Steam Workshop. None of it is extra content that exists elsewhere too. So very accessible. If you have R Factor 2 looking to get it, you will be able to race all this stuff just right out of the box.
And I'll second that one. As a member of staff of R Factor 2, go! Buy it now! It's amazing. No, jokes aside, it's a great sim platform, and it does offer such a wonderful variety to things like this one, an era of motorsport in sim racing that is often overlooked. So it's great that these, we said it at the beginning of the show, it's just sensational that the spirit, the Targa Florio, can be relived in a virtual world long after it ceased to become a thing in real life. And that's the beauty, isn't it, of virtual motorsport, that the possibilities are quite literally limitless.
It is. I know a lot of folks get a lot of joy out of doing, kind of replicating the modern motorsport that's out there, and that'll never go away. But hopefully stuff like this, and I hope to see more, because it would be great to do races that I also don't have to plan as well. But we can do so much more emulating old events that just isn't possible to do in real life anymore for many, many reasons. We can do that in sim racing, so I hope to see a lot more of it over the coming years.
Oh my god.
Ascari's really giving it down the hill here too. This is his final opportunity to gain on Hrrc. He's sliding all over the track here, but he's got just a few kilometers left till he gets to Campo Felice, which is the final town that you'll pass through and then get onto that long straightaway. And this little Maserati, it's very quick through the corners, but it's going to struggle against that Ferrari on the straight.
All Tommy Mäkinen style, as you can see. That was Simichic's car just disappearing around that corner.
He's not far behind. It's 4.6,
no.
4.4 seconds. And again, he started about 15 seconds behind Hrrc. So, it wasn't exact. So we don't know for certain if he's within that at the finish, if he's beaten him. But it is going to be close. And we'll have to wait for those final results to see who really got the win here.
And interestingly, that gap has stayed quite similar over the course of the last couple of laps. If we cast our mind back to the previous lap, they were within sight of each other at the time. That's only moved out for a few seconds, considering the differential in the horsepower potential of both cars. And as you say, the fact it gives lap time in different ways at different parts of the circuit. This has been a monster drive from Ascari, actually. Really, really impressive.
Oh, Martin Bayer out. Looks like he may have had some issues. As Hrrc is just coming down now. It's just ahead of Ascari here, but he's going to be coming down to the final town soon. Impressive too. We haven't had a few DNFs, as we just had Martin DNF, but it's a much cleaner run than I was expecting for sure. Having been one of those early DNFs myself.
Someone's just said in the YouTube chat, who's got the guts to do what Ascari is doing in the last 10 minutes of a long race? Well, Ascari
you
can
do think
clearly.
about it, and
oh my
we
god.
had a few. Man, look at him go. We had a few folks talk about this during qualifying. I was thinking about it myself. When you're this far into the lap, you're 34 minutes into your 40-minute lap, and you're 10 seconds up on your total time. How easy is it to throw 10 seconds away? And so it's such a mind game to just concentrate at the task at hand. And no doubt Hrrc and Ascari are pros at this and just focusing on what's important at the time. But Ascari is closing in even further here on Hrrc, and if he gets close enough, I wonder if he's going to be able to get a slipstream as they're just rounding a couple of corners here into Campo Felice. It'll be a short run through here and then down onto that straightaway.
Yeah,
just sliding right up to the spectators.
I hope healthcare is free in Italy, because, damn, we haven't actually seen this straight yet on camera, so it'd be interesting to see flash out. So I don't think Ascari's close enough to do anything, because that gap's gone now back up to 4 seconds.
We'll see here. So this corner, one of the only on the track that's cobblestone, and it is much slippery, much more slippery than the rest of the circuit is. They'll negotiate their way there. That'll be a short. There's just a few chicanes and a couple hairpins, of course, and then they'll get onto that straightaway.
It's so heartening as a driver as well when you can see the target in front of you, you can see your rival. It gives you a little bit more enthusiasm. We're looking at Martin Bayer now, so he retired a few moments ago. Let's have a quick look what happens here. A little bit of a touch at the grass, gets a tank slapper, controls the car, but then runs out of real estate. And there is those barriers, Robert Kubica style, straight into it, lose a wheel, and sadly, game over for Bayer. But yeah,
Symmetry just gone
on a charge.
Did they go onto the straightaway there? But yeah, Martin Bayer there, that was up at Borgo Eras, and there are quite a few of those guardrails that'll end things awful quick. This straightaway, longer than the Mulsanne. It is, I believe it's 7 kilometers or 9 kilometers straight. It's such a needed rest towards the end of the lap, but there still is a little bit to do. There's what's called the Buonfornello kink that Hrrc will come up to here in a few kilometers. That is like the Mazda kink, but more severe and trickier to do in these cars.
And look at the timing tower on the left-hand side, how that gap is extending because of the horsepower difference between the two. 6.7 when they joined the straight, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5. That's a very visual representation of what those extra horses can give you, isn't it, on a straight?
Absolutely is. Yeah, he's going to pull out quite a lot here. There is a short run through some curvy stuff towards the end that Ascari might be able to pull it in, but here he comes up to the kink. A really tricky section to get right, especially right at the end of the lap. High commit. He's actually taking a little bit easier, but I don't blame him because it's quite the tricky section. He slides it through there. And then back onto another little short shoot. Wiggle of the car. Pedal down. Beautiful stuff.
In real life, this would be a face full of flies for our drivers. Open face helmet, of course, at touching speeds of 200 miles an hour for a long time for the drivers, but it's so difficult to even just catch your breath in a real car on this one, just with the wind and the velocity hitting your face, and just some goggles and either a leather helmet or a polo helmet or a small health device on the top of your head. And imagine the focus a real driver needs to get the car sideways like Hrrc's doing at this moment in time, with all those distractions around you and all those physical interactions with the atmosphere around as well. It really is. It must have been spectacular. Simincic sideways gets the car really pivoted through the corner, confident that it's going to do exactly what he expects it to do. And this, gents, is absolutely a man that is on the top of his game at this moment in time, isn't he? Really confident behind the wheel.
He's coming through the final couple of hairpins here. And he'll run down past the train station, which is where the garages are. And we'll end his race, and he's on track to do another just absolutely flying lap. Ascari's back still about 12 seconds off. And barring any mistakes here from Hrrc, it seems like it's probably going to end around that gap, but it'll all come up to start times and pit stop transfers and everything to see who actually won. But what you're seeing really is a group of racers at the top of their game here. As there he comes past the train station. There's 2 corners left for Hrrc now to come across the line and finish his Targa Florio.
There's the first of them. Oof. Thought we'd almost stacked it right at the end. And there's the second of them. I would say that Hrrc Simitric is going to win the Targa Florio, but we need to work that out as he finishes in style there with the fastest lap time of 40:06.553. So he's only probably, what, half a second off his qualifying time there?
Was Ascari slides it across the line as well. But there he comes, finishes
40:06 on that final lap. It's not far off.
And with the way the time trial works here, we've got Jackson obviously coming down the hill. He's a little bit out still from Campo Felice. Or rather, he's actually past that, so he's coming towards the end of the lap as well. So he's not too far off. But we don't know, obviously, who wins until every driver finishes, because it's not, you know, once the first driver starts that the race starts. It's when your individual lap starts.
Celebratory drifting from Hrrc and Ascari. Trying to outdo each other.
So we're getting notes that Jackson needs to do a sub 410 to still be eligible. He's coming through the final couple of corners now.
Could do it, I think.
Little kiss of a
I'm not sure, our
there
time
as well.
might be a little... Did he? Yeah, our time might be slightly behind from the lap times, but we'll see what it is when he comes across the line here.
Bump the wall at the train station as well. Doesn't say what he just did, so...
So I'm seeing that he did his final lap was... Well, it looks like in sim at least 41:07 with a pit stop, so tough to say if he would have been able to capitalize on that. Darren Andrews here, 4th on track then. Second of the 2-liter cars, first Bristol. Had some trouble early on, but he's going to come and finish as well.
I think a finish is a win for anybody. Rip.
Hard into the wall. It's actually surprisingly hard to make that corner, and it's one of those, I don't know if you've ever had this at longer tracks like the Nordschleife, where Dion Hansen's going to come through his ball, but getting that first corner, because you're always doing it maybe at a slower speed when you're starting a lap, when you're actually at speed, it's a lot trickier than it looks, but he's able to get through it nice and clean. Finished 4th on track there. A good race by Dion. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to get the overall win, but you may very well have the 3-liter win. As Hrrc, as well in the 3 liters, comes across, not too far behind. We'll have to look on track 2. I'm looking down the running order, and I believe our final car on the circuit is about halfway through the lap, so there's still quite a lot of driving to go from them.
It's also going to be stupid o'clock in the morning for these Australians that are driving.
Yeah, we haven't checked in too much on Reese Gardner, but he's still motoring along as well, which is great to see. I know this was an important one for him. Matt Wright, of course, got focused on here on the screen. He's not super far from the end of the lap.
This just goes to show the scale of the event as well, doesn't it? That our race winners, our first finishers across the line finished quite a while ago, and we've still got drivers halfway through their final lap. That's just how long this circuit is compared to the kind of things that we're more traditionally used to in real and virtual motorsport. And Matt Wright in the beautiful Gordini T24, number 276, not a million miles away now from finishing his session. And as I forget who of you it was that said it a few moments ago, but just finishing this race is a victory all over its own, isn't it? It's a race against what you're capable of almost as much as it is a race against your rivals, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Just finishing any of these races all season has been the goal. If you look at the attrition we've had in many of the classes, simply finishing the race, you'll get class points. Top 6 finishers of each class get points. And certainly in the 5-liter category, but also some of the 3-liter races, 2-liter races, that would get you enough points or a finishing position to score as Matt Wright finishes his Targa Florio as well. Only wish we could simulate the big crowds at the finish line.
Imagine how hilariously difficult this would have been if we'd have put a bit of rain onto the racetrack as well. That must be insane in these conditions. As another Gordini now, the Denmark machine, coming through the final couple of corners to finish their event. And when you finish one of these events, regardless of where you finish, regardless of where you place, is it relief that you've done the job, or is it a bit disappointment that it's all over and done with for another season?
A bit of a mix, which has been great. I know sometimes when you're doing a big event, you're just happy it's over, right? Especially if there's a lot of anticipation and practice. But the sentiment I've seen across the board from drivers this season has been that they can't wait for the next one. We've had so many questions about season 2. What is season 2 going to be? When's it going to be? And currently, there's no specific plans for anything. I'm sure we'll see something at some point, but I know that just means to me that folks really want to do more of this type of thing. But there is some good in scarcity. You know, not doing a Targa Florio every weekend does make the one that we are doing very special.
Please do a season 2, because I want to get semi-decent and come and participate in some of these, because it has been unbelievable to watch this, and it has whet my appetite in the most extreme of ways to dig down the back of the sofa and find some skill, because I want a piece of this action. Incredible stuff, man.
Aiden said something very similar, so maybe, but we'll have to find some new folks to broadcast the races for us.
Yeah, I mean, we could commentate from behind the wheel. I don't know how much of it will be broadcastable, but
right, Aiden, this is all us making big talk. Neither of us have even a small percentage chance of skill to be able to go and participate in any of this. Don't worry.
Well, I beat the real world racing drivers, so yeah. No, but in these cars, I've got no chance. I need something with downforce.
And here comes Richard Woodcock, just finishing their strongest name in sim racing, I would say. Mark Ziedler and another Mercedes-Benz. He's coming around through the final part of the lap as well. Seems like we'll catch each driver here towards the end, which is nice to see each of them. But Mark's been, I think, at every round this season, or has at least tried to qualify for each of them.
It's been very, very gratifying to see the list of different nationalities as well that we've seen. We talked about it, Aidan and I, a little bit earlier on in the broadcast. It really is an international event, this one, isn't it? We've got drivers from Argentina, the States, from the UK, from Europe. It's great to see so many people so engaged in what is, frankly, a very niche part of what is a niche sim racing scene anyway.
It is, and it's tough to find, obviously tough to find a time where everyone can compete, but we very strategically chose when these races would take place so that the largest amount of folks could participate. And although it is very, very late in Southeast Asia, we do have obviously a few Australians and New Zealanders that have been involved. And so it's great. We pretty much have the whole world covered with the series, and that's exactly what we wanted.
Makes the grid nice and colourful as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, big shout out to the livery makers, actually. It's amazing. I think you mentioned it, Aidan, earlier, but it's worth mentioning again that period livery designs, maker, it's such an important aspect that's often overlooked in a championship. Looks sensational, the whole field of cars, and yeah, really adds to the immersive factor of replicating an incredible race in a virtual world.
It does. We did get a bit of, at first when we announced the series, and we had a very long section in our rule book about the liveries. And I know at first, maybe throws some people off, or why are we so specific? But once we did a race and everyone saw a full grid of cars and national colors with simple schemes, I think we all understood and really haven't heard anything about that since, and it's nice to have something different. Of course, you see the grids plastered with ads and everything, but to really put you in the time period, having very simplistic cars is very nice.
Yeah, considering that earlier in the week Paul was commentating on a British touring car league where all the cars were covered in logos and had super colourful, super high tech liveries painted on, and now it's back to basics. It's quite a
That's
it is role playing in a bit. It is role playing a bit, but it still makes it look real. If that makes any sense.
Aiden, saying they were super high tech liveries, my friend, was very generous of you.
The
Colourful
was the best one, obviously.
Right, gents, I have to say goodbye now, unfortunately, while our last... Hello! But I just want to say to Jake and GP Laps, to the Historic Road Racing Championship, to Mike and to everybody behind the scenes that's put this thing together and invited me along, a massive, massive thank you to you all. It's been an absolute honour and a pleasure to really get myself immersed in this world. So thank you so much. It's been incredible. Thoroughly enjoyed myself.
That's been great having
Very
you along.
nice talking with you.
It's good to be in the same room for once.
Yeah, for a change, rather than posting garbage to each other on Discord. So, guys, thank you very much. Folks at home, thank you for putting up with me for a few hours. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully I'll get invited back one day in the future. As if so, I'll be there like a shot. Thank you.
Well, there's Le Mans next time.
Count me in if you want me, for sure.
Yes, let's do it.
Right, gents, thank you. I need to fly, but till next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Cheers. Ciao, ciao.
Cool. Right, so now it's the YouTube crossover that everybody wanted, apparently. Aiden and GP laps, as we see Scooby coming up to the end of his lap, one would hope, 38 minutes in. He should be towards the end. So we think we have a top three. We're just double checking it, but it will be preliminarily before we actually tell you what's going on. But
yeah, we're doing our best quick maths here to see if we can figure out who has the top steps, but it'll take the evening for us to fully calculate, verify everything, get the full rundown, and we'll make sure to distribute that over YouTube comments and Twitter posts and everything that we can. As Scooby here in his controller, his dexterity drive is going to finish his Targa Florio, which is great to see.
Finished it on a controller. He is the real winner. Real Deal God is, I think, one of the last runners to come across the line, isn't he? He's not running last, but he's quite far back. Had problems at
we did see we saw a swap there too, because at some point we had seen Scooby let Real Deal God by, but looks like he got back around him at some point. But yeah, it's coming in the Jag, and yeah, we did see some real problems for him at Dundrop, but finishing the Targa Florio, which is an absolute accomplishment for Real Deal.
Yeah, considering he was parked on an embankment at Dundrod for about 20 minutes. Nikolai B, the Dane, in his Merc, looking great. So we're still trying to figure out if we want to declare a preliminary result.
I got you.
Yeah, that one. Me fail English. As we just want to double check that before we start putting things out. But to have this many people finish this track is going to be a highlight of the season. But I want to ask you, Jake, how are you feeling about Le Mans? Have you done any laps yet? Have you got your nose in early, or has it just been Targa for this one?
Definitely been focused on Targa. I have done some laps in these cars at Le Grand Circuit, as we're going to call it, before. And it's a great track for them, obviously. It's actually made by the mod creator, Wuchu. So it's very fitting for the series to end there. And yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, it's exactly what you'd expect. Slipstreaming the whole time, very long straightaways, top speed's going to be king, but also the braking. And if you can remember all the way back to Longford at the very start of the season, how much we were talking about brakes and brakes being an issue. expect that to return for Le Grand Le Mans.
Especially when you're slamming on the brakes for Mulsanne at the end of the straight because there's no chicanes this time around.
Absolutely. Yes, it's full brakes over the top of the hill at the end of the Mulsanne. You're going to slow down for, was that Mulsanne corner at the end?
No Porsche curves, no chicanes. It's going to be crazy.
Absolutely will. Looks like we may get the preliminary final results. At least for the podium, we'll have to wait to announce them further. But we can go there with what we've just been sent, at least for the time being, as we'll have the finishers finish up the race.
Just to quickly answer a question in chat from Tom Percy was, do these guys race at Old Spa? They did round 2. You can dig through the live streams on my channel or on the Simply Race YouTube channel to find how that one turned out. As we do have a provisional podium, I'll just use provisional because I can actually say that word. Ascari Kantonen provisionally has won this race. We're going to double and triple check all of the results, but Ascari Kantonen winner, followed by Jerne Simicic and Jackson Robillard. So how do you think that's going to pan out for Jerne's season, Jake, as he tries to catch up to you in the standings with drop rounds and things like that?
Yeah, well, I think it certainly kept him in play for it, for the overall championship. This is also going to, I think, do Jackson pretty good as well. We won't really know. It's certainly going to keep it open for the final round, so nothing is tied up across the board. If Ascari did pull this off, and we think he did, but having a second straight win in a row, as unsurprising as it could be, he could actually be at play for the overall championship in the 2-liter Maserati.
Winning in a 2-liter Maserati overall, that would just be insane. But it's going to be a tough job for him at Le Mans. He'd have to have everybody retire because the 5 litres is just going to be OP on this particular track. But Ascari Kantonen, 2 wins in a row, first back-to-back winner of the season as well. That's how competitive the season has been. So, anything else to say?
Absolutely, it's been a pretty wild season thus far, and this race especially. Appreciate everybody's patience in us getting it up and running, and happy we were able to get what looks like a very solid Targa Florio in the wraps, I guess.
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible to watch. It's flown by. So I think, considering we've been on for quite a while, and thank you to everybody that stuck with it, watching the stream, despite all the problems we had starting out, but we managed to get through it in the end. It's been incredible to watch. Time has flown by. Congratulations to Ascari, provisionally at least. Well done to Ascari. And stick around on the GP Laps YouTube channel and the socials for when the open qualifying happens for the final round at Le Mans. And until next time, I've been Aidan Millward. He's been Richie Axelson. Thank you to Simply Race for the broadcast, and we will see you next time for the season finale. Goodbye.